Chapter 1233. After bringing the overjoyed Wu Lixue to the divine illusionary realm, Hong Tailong, Pheasant, and the rainbow-feathered Lion King were still waiting for him. Naturally, Wu Lixue and Pheasant hugged and cried out in joy. Hong Tailong approached Yu Qianqiu and asked about the demon god. After learning that the demon god was no longer looking for trouble, Hong Tailong heaved a sigh of relief. I just don't know if the demon god is not looking for trouble for the time being or if he will come again in the future. How can we live in fear every day? After Hong Tailong sighed, his eyes suddenly lit up. He elbowed Yu Qianqiu and said, "Oh right. How is your mission to administer punishment on behalf of the heavens? If it's almost done, we might as well seek refuge in the divine realm. With the protection of Coiling Dragon Ancestor at the Divine Dragon Mountain, the demon god may not be able to find us." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He thought to himself, how the hell do I know what's up with administering punishment on behalf of the heavens? If not for Hong Tailong's reminder, he would have forgotten about it. He had told so many lies that even he almost believed them. Previously, when he was being chased by the demon god, he indeed wanted to seek refuge in the divine realm. However, after Hong Tailong's reminder, he remembered that the Netherworld Divine Manners passage to the divine realm led directly to the Dragon Clan's Divine Dragon Mountain. When he thought that he would have to face Coiling Dragon Ancestor, he did not dare to go even if he was beaten to death. He coughed dryly and sighed with a face full of melancholy. If it's just to seek refuge, hiding in the all-heavens boundary is the best place. However, the key is that I am not resigned to it. I want to seek revenge on the demon god. Yes, I also think that the all-heavens boundary is a good place to seek refuge. However, the key is that you provoked the wind god. If we go there, aren't we courting death? Hong Tailong sneered disdainfully. Seek revenge on the demon god? So many peak experts in the divine realm can't do anything to the demon god. Do you think you can get revenge? I think we should hide first. Sigh. The ultimate mission of administering punishment on behalf of the heavens is to eradicate the demon god. Yu Qianqiu said solemnly as he looked at Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong's mouth was agape as his expression stiffened. The muscles on his face twitched violently twice. Then, he revealed a smile that was uglier than a crying face as he cried out in grief. It can't be! Are you kidding me? Why would you accept such an impossible task? You think I want to? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and continued to bluff. Do you think I can refuse? It's over. It's all over. Hong Tailong sighed as he shook his head. He had lost all his spirit in an instant. The blow he had received was too great. Wu Lixue, Pheasant, and the rainbow-feathered Lion King were speechless when they heard that Yu Qianqiu had such a great mission. It's not like there's no way to deal with the demon god. The rainbow-feathered Lion King, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said something shocking. What is it? The few of them looked at him in unison. The rainbow-feathered lion Wang Xiongjian walked around a few times. There was some hesitation in his eyes, as if he didn't know whether he should say it or not. Pheasant immediately lost his patience. He stood on Wu Lixue's shoulder and shouted, "Lion King, just say it." Seeing that Pheasant had spoken, the rainbow-feathered Lion King nodded his head and slowly said, "I don't know if you've heard of the great god Yi's heaven and earth splitting arrow and the supreme divine bow." The few of them looked at him expectantly or nodded repeatedly, waiting for him to continue. Back then, the great god Yi and the war god Rui both died after an unprecedented battle. The supreme divine bow left behind by the great god Yi was personally sealed by the ancient phoenix god. If we can find the supreme divine bow and the heaven and earth splitting arrow, we might be able to kill the demon god. However, the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows have already been shot to 9 other spacetimes. I'm afraid it's impossible to find them. The rainbow-feathered Lion King said apologetically to the few of them, "Without a great cultivation that can travel through spacetime, it's impossible to find the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows. If the divine arrows can't be combined with the divine bow, they won't be able to unleash their formidable power. I'm just speaking thoughtlessly, don't take it seriously." Wu Lixue, Pheasant, and Hong Tai-long's gazes all turned to Yu Qianqiu. The three of them knew that this guy just happened to have something that couldn't be found. Yu Qianqiu's face was indescribably pleasantly surprised. He quickly took out the divine arrow and said cheerfully, "Sorry. I just happened to have a heaven and earth splitting arrow in my hand." This time, it was the rainbow-feathered Lion King's turn to be surprised. With a flash of light, he turned into a tall and sturdy man. He reached out to grab the divine arrow in Yu Qianqiu's hand to verify its authenticity. In the end, he found that it was unimaginably heavy. He had to spend a lot of cultivation to pick it up. There was no need to verify its authenticity. He cried out in surprise, "Is this really the heaven and earth splitting arrow? How did it fall into your hands? What's real can't be fake, and what's fake can't be real." Yu Qianqiu reached out to grab the divine arrow back. His eyes lit up and he said, "Lion King, from what you said just now, the supreme godly bow was personally sealed by the ancient Phoenix god, and you're the descendant of the Phoenix Temple's guardian god. Could it be that you know the whereabouts of the heaven and earth splitting arrow? To be more precise, could it be that the supreme godly bow is sealed in the Phoenix Temple?" The others also became excited, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. The rainbow-feathered Lion King looked at the divine arrow in Yu Qianqiu's hand and exclaimed, "I don't know where the supreme godly bow is sealed, but according to legend, the Phoenix Temple is indeed related to the place where the supreme godly bow is sealed. It's said that whoever can decipher the Phoenix Temple's secret will be able to find the supreme godly bow. However, the Phoenix Temple is protected by a powerful restriction. Ordinary people can't enter at all. Only those who have a great destiny with the Phoenix clan can enter." Speaking up to here, his gaze looked towards Wu Lixue. Yu Qianqiu, Hong Tai-long, and Pheasant also looked towards her. Wu Lixue looked at herself up and down with a blank expression. Puzzled, she said, "Why are you all looking at me? This heartless girl. The person who has a great destiny with the Phoenix clan is you." Hong Tai-long's old face turned into a chrysanthemum flower as he clapped his hands and chuckled non-stop. "I knew it. How could old ancestor coiling dragon hand over an impossible task to me? No wonder he asked me to bring the heaven and earth splitting arrow down here. No wonder he asked you, Yu Qianqiu, to complete the task. Turns out that this is the trump card to deal with the demon god. I say, why is everyone still in a daze? Let's go. Let's go to the Phoenix Temple." Everything was ready, only the east wind was left. The group no longer hesitated. Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was the highest, so he immediately took out the flying shuttle and carried them away. The rainbow-feathered Lion King showed him the way. A day later, the flying shuttle stopped at the peak of a towering mountain. The mountain was surrounded by mountains and seas of clouds. The scenery was enchanting, and all kinds of birds were flying around the mountain, chirping. The peak of the mountain was paved with pure white jade, and there was a white jade platform that faced the cliff. Below the platform was a jade tablet with the 3 words Phoenix Stage carved on it. Under the sunlight, it was dazzling, making people feel as if they were in a dream. The rainbow-feathered Lion King pointed at the white jade platform and said, "The Phoenix Temple is up there. Everyone, please follow me." He took the lead and climbed up the jade stairs. Step by step, he walked up with a devout expression. Yu Qianqiu and the others looked around and were speechless. They didn't see any trace of the temple. Only the Pheasant stood on Wu Lixue's shoulder and excitedly said, "Sister Shuai, just follow the Lion King." Wu Lixue nodded and followed the rainbow-feathered Lion King up the jade stairs. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tai-long looked at each other, then followed behind Wu Lixue. After everyone stepped on the platform, the rainbow-feathered Lion King bowed slightly to the Pheasant on Wu Lixue's shoulder. The Pheasant immediately flapped its wings and flew up, making loud clanging sounds towards the empty sky. With the Phoenix's cry, all the flying birds in the surroundings landed on the ground and bowed, as if they were on a pilgrimage. Wherever the Pheasant's sound waves reached, transparent ripples would appear in the void, and an image gradually appeared in the sea of clouds. A grand palace wrapped in a golden transparent ball of light appeared in the sky. The entire palace was made of pure white jade, and on the surface of the ball of light, there were many golden phoenixes dancing in the air. It was so beautiful that it was hard to look at them. Suddenly, a jade staircase appeared, connecting the palace in the air and the platform under everyone's feet. The few people who came here for the first time found it hard to believe. They clearly saw many flying birds circling around the palace, but they didn't see anything that could stop them from flying. They didn't expect a palace to be hidden in the air. This was obviously not an illusion, and they couldn't help but feel amazed. The rainbow-feathered Lion King continued to step on the staircase, leading the way. The few people also followed behind him. The staircase under their feet was real, and it was indeed not an illusion. When they reached the top of the staircase, they could already see the vast square of the temple. It was pure white, solemn and sacred, and there were two huge jade phoenixes on the left and right, looking down at everyone on the staircase. However, everyone was blocked by a golden transparent light screen, and they couldn't take another step forward. The rainbow-feathered Lion King walked to the side and made way for Wu Lixue to enter. Wu Lixue was at a loss and didn't know what to do. The pheasant on her shoulder giggled and said, "Sister Shui, whether we can enter the temple or not depends on you. Quickly put on your phoenix cloud robe and bring us in." Wu Lixue looked back at Yu Qianqiu and smiled bitterly. "Phoenix cloud robe? I don't know how to put it on." Yu Qianqiu frowned. He knew that Wu Lixue did have a phoenix cloud robe in her body, but it seemed like Wu Lixue didn't know how to use it. He walked forward and tried to touch the golden transparent light screen. He found that there was a strong resistance, but there was no danger. He immediately took a few steps back and smiled at Wu Lixue. "It's okay. You can try and see if you can enter. If you really can't, then forget it." "Okay." Wu Lixue nodded obediently and walked forward. She bit her lips and reached out to touch the golden light screen. The moment her finger touched the light screen, Wu Lixue's body let out a slight buzzing noise. Abruptly, his body glowed with a splendid light, then shrunk. Next, a dreamy, nebula-like, seven-colored cloak covered Wu Lixue's body. An ancient sense of power was released from Wu Lixue's body along with that pair of faintly discernible starry wings. Chapter 1234. The misty seven-colored nebula was gorgeous and enchanting. Specks of light flickered as they swayed. Her dress fluttered in the wind as if it could fly away at any time. The ancient aura was like that of an eternal imperial family. Wu Lixue, who was wearing the phoenix cloud robe, was so noble that people could only look up to her. They didn't dare to have any thoughts of sullying her. Hong Tailong's eyes lit up as he looked at the fluttering nebula dress beside him. He reached out to grab it, wanting to feel what it felt like. However, he discovered that there was nothing there. He couldn't grab it at all. He rubbed his chin and clicked his tongue as he said, "So this is the phoenix cloud robe. It is rumored to be the robe of the ancient phoenix god. I didn't expect that it would fall into the hands of this simple-minded girl." The rainbow-feathered Lion King's expression turned solemn. He looked at Wu Lixue with a respectful and pious gaze. At this moment, the golden phoenix silhouettes that were fluttering all over the transparent golden light barrier suddenly gathered together. Wu Lixue was so frightened that she hurriedly withdrew her hand. Thousands of golden phoenix silhouettes gathered together. They circled around with their heads and tails intertwined. It was extremely beautiful. A whirlpool began to appear on the light barrier. It gradually expanded until a large door leading to the divine temple opened on the steps. "The divine temple is open. Sister Shui, quickly come in." The pheasant flapped its wings and flew in first. It excitedly called out to the people outside. Wu Lixue, who was shrouded in the rainbow cloud robe, timidly walked in. The others had just followed her in when the thousands of golden phoenixes that had gathered and circled around the light barrier immediately dispersed. They continued to fly aimlessly on the light barrier. The large door of the light barrier closed and disappeared. Everyone followed behind the fluttering Wu Lixue. As they walked on the quiet and spacious white jade plaza, they could feel the ancient and sacred aura that seeped into their hearts. It was unknown how many years this place had existed for. The pheasant wasn't as sentimental as the others. It flapped its wings and excitedly flew into the tall palace door. When they passed by the door of the palace, they couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the words Phoenix Palace, written on the high lintel. Inside the gate, the pheasant's excited cries could be heard continuously, urging everyone to come in and take a look. They reckoned that there was no danger, so they all walked in. The huge interior of the palace made everyone feel like tiny ants. The jade pillars surrounding them were at least dozens of feet in diameter and hundreds of feet in height. They were completely integrated and there were no marks on them. They were actually polished from a single piece of jade. There were no less than 100 jade pillars like this, and no one knew where they came from. The vast and spacious palace was completely empty. Apart from the jade pillars standing at the top, there was almost nothing else to be seen. On the high platform in the middle of the palace there was a huge jade phoenix sculpture. Its wings were folded together to form a jade couch. On top of the jade couch was the chest area of the jade phoenix sculpture. There was a large metal wheel embedded in it. Round after round, it was the only metal object in the entire jade palace. It was very eye-catching. While everyone was still observing the surroundings, the pheasant was clearly attracted by the metal wheel. It flew in front of the jade couch and pondered for a long time. Suddenly it shouted, "Sister Shui, quickly come and take a look. What is this thing?" Wu Lixue, who was wearing a rainbow-colored nebula dress, floated over. She stood on the jade couch and stared at the metal wheel with the pheasant. The rainbow-feathered Lion King walked over with a pious expression. It stood at the bottom of the jade couch with its hands clasped behind its back. "Apart from being huge, I don't see anything special about this so-called Phoenix Temple." Yu Qianqiu looked left and right. He patted Hong Tailong's shoulder and said, "Hong Tailong, you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Let's take a good look and see if we can find anything related to the divine bow." "Yes." Hong Tailong nodded. He also had the same intention. If he didn't take a good look at this place, he would be letting himself down. Both of them went to the left and right sides of the main hall. They circled around every huge jade pillar and looked around, hoping to find some clues. Not long after, the clatter-clatter sound of a spring suddenly came from inside the main hall. The pheasant's cheerful laughter followed. "So this plate can be turned. Sister Shui, come and give it a try." Yu Qianqiu stuck his head out from behind a jade pillar. He saw Wu Lixue and the pheasant, who were standing on the jade couch, spinning the metal wheel that was pieced together. Both of them were having a great time. Suddenly, both the pheasant and Wu Lixue cried out in surprise. They flashed to the bottom of the jade couch and looked at the metal wheel that was spinning continuously. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong didn't know what was going on. They also flashed back. They saw that the huge wheel that was made up of more than 10 metal rings on the jade couch was spinning on its own. Some were spinning clockwise, some were spinning counterclockwise. The more it spun, the faster it spun. This was clearly not normal. What they didn't know was that the golden transparent light barrier that enveloped the divine temple was rapidly shrinking. It quickly retracted into the divine temple. "Did you guys touch some kind of restriction?" Yu Qianqiu asked cautiously. He was worried that they would attract some trouble. The pheasant and Wu Lixue shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. Just when the metal wheel was spinning so fast that everyone couldn't see it clearly, a beam of light suddenly shot out and enveloped them. The spinning wheel had already disappeared. What replaced it was a window that peeked into the universe. Behind it was the vast and endless stars. How can this be? The few of them were shocked. However, what made them even more shocked was that the beam of light was slowly retracting. At the same time, Wu Lixue, pheasant, and the rainbow-feathered Lion King were also brought back. The three of them couldn't help but float along with the retracting beam of light. "Yu Qianqiu, save me!" Wu Lixue shouted in panic. "Shui air!" Yu Qianqiu fiercely stretched out his claws to grab Wu Lixue. He wanted to pull her back. However, when he collided with the retracting beam of light, he was immediately repelled. Even with his cultivation, he couldn't break through. Hong Tailong wanted to help him. He tried again and again, but it was all useless. The panicking rainbow-feathered Lion King suddenly said with joy, I know. My ancestor once said that as long as I guard this place and fulfill my duty, I will be able to return to the divine world one day. This is the passage to the divine world left behind by the ancient phoenix god. My mission is complete. The ancient phoenix god wants to bring me back to the divine world. The passage to the divine world left behind by the ancient phoenix god. The struggling pheasant stopped and cheered. Wu Lishue struggled even more fiercely. She stretched out her hand and shouted at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, save me. I don't want to go to the divine world. I want to be with you. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened. He directly summoned a divine arrow and shot it at the beam of light. Who knew that when the incomparably sharp divine arrow pierced the beam of light, it was like a punch hitting cotton. Couldn't display its power at all. Instead, it was bounced back. At this time, the beam of light had completely retracted into the window. It wrapped around Wu Lishue, pheasant, and the rainbow-feathered lion king and flew into the depths of the universe, disappearing without a trace. Following that, the window that allowed them to see the universe also disappeared. The metal wheel that was spinning in either direction or in reverse returned to its original state. Yu Qianqiu was unable to restrain his anger. He summoned another divine arrow and shot it at the metal wheel. With a loud bang, the metal wheel stopped spinning. However, it wasn't damaged in the slightest. The divine arrow actually couldn't do anything to it. Almost at the same time, the entire divine palace shook violently. The jade pillars collapsed with a loud bang, and the huge roof fell down. It's over. The divine palace is about to collapse. Hong Tailong cried out in alarm. The two of them attacked the collapsed roof at the same time. With a boom, a huge hole was created. The two of them passed through the hole and floated in the air. They saw that the Jade Palace had already crashed into the mountain range below and was smashed into pieces. The Divine Phoenix Temple was destroyed just like that. The two of them stayed in the air for a long time. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu raised both of his arms and roared angrily at the sky. Who can tell me what is going on? Shui, how could this be? Hong Tailong also shook his head. He flew down and rummaged through the shattered Jade Palace. In the end, he carried the huge metal wheel and flew back up. He placed it on the mountain peak with the Phoenix Stage inscription. He rubbed his chin and examined it carefully. In the end, he squatted down and started spinning the metal in circles, as if he was trying to figure out what was going on. After venting his anger in the air for a while, Yu Qianqiu powerlessly landed on the mountain peak. He sat on the ground in a daze and didn't say a word. After a long time, he suddenly jumped up and shouted, Hong Tailong, come, let's go to the Netherworld Divine Palace. Open the passage to the God Realm and we'll go there. Are you kidding me? We haven't completed our mission yet. How are we going to explain this to old ancestor Coiling Dragon when we return to the God Realm? Hong Tailong rolled his eyes at him. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He had a good time fooling Hong Tailong, but now he realized that he had shot himself in the foot. He clenched his teeth and said, We can't care so much. Let's save Shui first. Hong Tailong stood up, walked over, patted his shoulder, and consoled him. Don't worry. The ancient Phoenix God is famous for being kind. Based on the situation just now, Shui will only benefit from going to the God Realm. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the ancient Phoenix God has some bad intentions, do you think you can save that girl Shui from the ancient Phoenix God with your current abilities? Even a resurrected wind god can scare you into fleeing, let alone the ancient Phoenix God. Yu Qianqiu was silent. He knew that what Hong Tailong said was right, but he still couldn't put his mind at ease when Wu Lishue's fate was unknown. Since it has already happened, there's no point in being anxious. Come, take a look at this. Hong Tailong grabbed his arm and dragged him to the side of the metal wheel. He pointed at it and said, As long as you find the supreme divine bow, you will have something to rely on to save Wu Lishue or to deal with the demonic god. I suspect that there might be something strange about this wheel. Otherwise, there's no way the ancient Phoenix God would casually leave a treasure that even your divine arrows can't break. The clue to finding the supreme divine bow might be on it. Kid, your brain is better than mine. Calm down and take a good look. Chapter 1235. I can't calm myself down. Take a look for yourself. Yu Qianqiu waved his arm and shook off the other party's hand impatiently. However, the instant he turned around, he was stunned when his gaze swept across the metal wheel. Hong Tailong's eyes lit up. From Yu Qianqiu's expression, he could tell that Yu Qianqiu had discovered something. Hong Tailong swallowed his words and stared at Yu Qianqiu's every move. Yu Qianqiu slowly squatted down and extended his hand to touch the metal wheel. He realized that there were many square grooves on every ring of the metal wheel. The metal grooves weren't that big of a deal. The key was the carvings on the grooves that shocked him. There were actually the words, "Supporting Immortal," carved on the reverse side. There were also some grooves that were carved with images of an island. After touching it a few times to confirm it, he finally matched it with something in his memory. He couldn't help but cry out in shock, "Immortal Supporting Medallion." If he didn't remember wrongly, the two patterns on the metal grooves were the two sides of the Supporting Immortal Island's Immortal Supporting Medallion. Because he had obtained the Immortal Supporting Medallion before, he was very clear about the carvings on the Immortal Supporting Medallion. This couldn't be described as a coincidence. Hong Tailong squatted beside him with glowing eyes and asked curiously, "What is the Immortal Supporting Medallion?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer his question. He only shook his head and muttered to himself, "How is this possible? How can the Supporting Immortal Island's Immortal Supporting Medallion be related to the item in the Phoenix Temple?" His thoughts couldn't help but return to the past. The process of him obtaining the Immortal Supporting Medallion and joining the Supporting Immortal Island was still vivid in his mind. He vaguely recalled the legend of the Supporting Immortal Island regarding the Immortal Supporting Medallion. It was rumored that there were originally 300 Immortal Supporting Medallions. If anyone could gather all 300 Immortal Supporting Medallions together, they would know a secret. At that time, he felt that it was strange. The 300 Immortal Supporting Medallions must have appeared together at the very beginning. Why didn't the people of the Supporting Immortal Island know what the secret was? From the looks of it now, perhaps the 300 Immortal Supporting Medallions had to be paired together with this metal wheel in order to unravel a certain secret. What exactly was the secret? Could it be the place where the Supreme Godly Bow was sealed? The more Yu Qianqiu thought about it, the more shocked he became. If he did not see this thing, he would have forgotten about the Immortal Supporting Token. He started to count the number of grooves on the metal wheel: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 297, 298, 299, 300. No more, no less, it really is 300. How is this possible? The Supporting Immortal Island is actually related to the Phoenix Divine Temple. By the side, Hong Tailong was tormented by his baffling words until he scratched his head and scratched his ears. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "My blood brother, don't keep all the secrets to yourself. Say it and share it with me. I'm about to die from anxiety because of you." Yu Qianqiu didn't hide anything from Hong Tailong. He told Hong Tailong everything he knew about the Supporting Immortal Token when he first joined the Supporting Immortal Island in the mortal world. Hong Tailong was enlightened after listening to Yu Qianqiu's story. He laughed and patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder. If it was someone else, who would be able to unravel this secret? This was simply fate. No wonder old ancestor Coiling Dragon handed the heavy responsibility of eradicating the devil god to you. If it was someone else, it would be useless even if they racked their brains. That's right. Yu Qianqiu squeezed out a smile awkwardly. However, he was cursing in his heart. He thought that it was all a coincidence. Suddenly, Hong Tailong stood up. He opened his mouth and directly sucked the huge metal wheel into his stomach. He waved his hand and said, "It's better to be early than late. Let's go." Yu Qianqiu stood up in astonishment and asked, "Where to?" "Of course to that Supporting Immortal Island that you mentioned." Hong Tailong snickered and said, "The situation is very clear. Supporting Immortal Island is definitely the place where the Supreme Godly Bow is sealed. Since we already know the location, if we don't take it now, then when? Once we obtain the Supreme Godly Bow, we can go to the God Realm. It's fine if you want to save Wu Lixue or eradicate the Devil God. Let's go, let's go." This old dragon can't wait to see what the legendary supreme godly bow looks like. Yu Qianqiu thought about it and agreed. He casually flicked a small silver ball to the bottom of the mountain. With a wave of his hand, the two of them disappeared from the mountain peak. Blue waves surged. The sky was high and the sea was wide. Supporting Immortal Island was still the same supporting Immortal Island. The island's defensive formation was still there. However, it couldn't stop the two of them from entering. The two of them directly appeared on the island. It had only been a few years and no one had taken care of it. The buildings on the island were already somewhat dilapidated. Weeds were growing everywhere. The entire supporting Immortal Island was quiet. There wasn't a single person in sight. In fact, it was impossible for the owner of this island to return. Revisiting an old place, Yu Qianqiu was filled with emotions. The situation when he first entered the supporting Immortal Island was like yesterday. Now, everything was the same, but the people had changed. The main culprit of all this was him. He had caused the once glorious number one sect in the world to be annihilated in the passage of time. He strolled around the island, looking around for traces of the past. However, Hong Tailong wasn't as sentimental as him. With a boom, he forcefully destroyed the defensive formation on the island. Swish swish, he flew around, releasing his powerful divine sense into the depths of the island to check. After searching for a few times, he returned to Yu Qianqiu's side. He asked curiously, "Did you remember wrongly? If this supporting Immortal Island really has a divine artifact like the Supreme Godly Bow, it is impossible for me to not discover any abnormalities in such a small place." There is no abnormality? Yu Qianqiu also didn't believe it. He personally flew into the sky and released his powerful divine senses to scan the entire island. He didn't miss a single place, and indeed, he didn't discover any abnormalities. He landed back on the ground and felt that something was strange. There is nothing wrong. The pattern on the metal wheel is exactly the same as the supporting immortal medallion. Since there is nothing wrong, then this old dragon will tear down this entire supporting immortal island. I don't believe I can't find it. Hong Tailong revealed a sinister smile as he looked around. He was about to reveal his true form and search the entire island. Don't waste your time. It is useless. Yu Qianqiu extended his hand to stop him. He frowned and shook his head. I'm afraid things aren't so simple. If the Supreme Godly Bow could be found so easily, it would have been taken away by someone during the era when the ancient gods existed. It wouldn't be our turn to pick up the loot. Take out the metal wheel and let us take a closer look. That's true. Hong Tailong opened his mouth and spat out the metal wheel. He placed it flat on the ground. It was unknown if it was due to the force or something else, but a ring on the metal wheel turned. The other metal rings didn't move. Only this ring turned. As a transmigrator, Yu Qianqiu had more knowledge than the people of this era. Just the word compass was enough to make his eyelids twitch. He stared at the metal ring that turned and examined it carefully. He didn't see anything strange. He then examined the entire wheel carefully. Ever since the metal wheel appeared, this was the first time he examined it so seriously. Not long after, on the outermost metal ring that didn't have any grooves, there were 8 arrows facing outwards that attracted his attention. An idea flashed in his mind. He quickly examined all the grooves on the wheel. He realized that other than a groove and an arrow that pointed in the same direction, the other grooves didn't have any corresponding arrows. This is so difficult. It's really difficult to see anything from this wheel. Yu Qianqiu, if I'm not wrong, these 300 grooves have to be embedded with corresponding immortal supporting medallions. That way, we might be able to see something. Hong Tailong shook his head. Yu Qianqiu silently picked up the metal wheel from the ground. He changed his direction and the metal ring started to turn again. The groove that he was paying attention to was matched with an arrow and pointed in the direction it was pointed in. Hong Tailong exclaimed in surprise, "Did you notice something?" Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He carried the metal wheel and flew in the direction the arrow pointed in. Hong Tailong immediately followed. When the two of them flew to the forbidden area of Fuxin Island, the metal groove suddenly emitted light. Yu Qianqiu immediately stopped and lowered his head to take a look. It was the place where the consecrators of Fuxian Island lived. He immediately pointed to a house below and said solemnly, "If I'm not wrong, there should be an immortal supporting medallion in this house." Hong Tailong also saw something strange from the light emitted from the groove. He excitedly rubbed his palms and said, "Let me look for it." He scanned the house with his divine sense and his eyes lit up. He immediately rushed into the house and slapped open a rotten chair. A black medallion that seemed to be made of wood burst out. He grabbed it and looked at it. One side was carved with the words Fuxian, and the other side was carved with an image of an island. As expected, it was similar to the image on the metal wheel's groove. He flicked it with his finger and it gave off a dang-dang sound. It looked like it was made of wood, but it didn't seem like it at the same time. It was very hard and he couldn't tell what it was made of. Hong Tailong grabbed the medallion and flashed back. He laughed loudly and said, "Be ****starred. You really know how to hide it, to actually hide it in a chair. Who would have thought that such a thing would be hidden in a thin wooden board? Insert it into the glowing groove." Yu Qianqiu pointed and said. Hong Tailong grunted in acknowledgement. When he saw the words Fuxian engraved in the groove, he immediately inserted the corresponding side of the immortal supporting medallion. It was neither too big nor too small, and the moment it was inserted, the faint light emitted from the groove immediately disappeared. At the same time, another metal ring spun with a da-da sound. Yu Qianqiu looked towards the direction indicated by an arrow. He carried the metal roulette and flew in that direction. Hong Tailong followed closely behind him. In the sky above the sea region not far away from the supporting immortal island, another groove emitted a faint light once again. This time, there was no need for Yu Qianqiu to call for Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong had already dived into the sea. After a short while, he flew out with a medallion in his hand. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and laughed loudly. "Old Long, I really have to hand it to you. I was wondering what your brain was made of. I couldn't understand it even after looking at it for a long time, but you actually understood it with just one look. Hurry up and teach me how to play it." Yu Qianqiu didn't hide anything from him. After explaining the profoundness behind it, Hong Tailong inserted the immortal supporting medallion into the groove. As expected, the metal ring on the roulette spun once again, indicating a direction. "Let me play, let me play." Hong Tailong snatched the metal roulette into his hand and the two of them flew in the direction indicated once again. Chapter 1236. Just in the sea region not far from supporting Immortal Island, the two of them found 11 immortal supporting badges that were lost in the deep sea. Following the instructions on the metal roulette, the two of them rapidly flew across the entire human world. They were in the bustling cities, in the desolate wilderness, in the deep mountains and marshes, or in the boundless sea. Pieces of immortal supporting medallion that had been buried for countless years were dug out by the two of them from the history of the past. After spending a few days, the two of them found a total of 192 immortal supporting badges in the human world and embedded them into the metal wheel. However, that was all he found. When the 192nd immortal supporting medallion was inserted into the wheel, the metal wheel actually stopped moving. "Bastard! What's going on? There are still 108 more badges to be found. Yu Qianqiu, come and take a look. Is it spoiled?" Hong Tailong kept patting the metal wheel. When it didn't spin, he would help it spin. However, it was useless. The two of them stood on a mountain peak and could see a city in the distance. The 192 immortal supporting badges were found in that city. Yu Qianqiu frowned and thought for a while before sighing. "I think I know the reason. I brought everyone from supporting Immortal Island to the divine illusionary realm. The remaining immortal supporting badges shouldn't be in the human world anymore. That's why the metal wheel can't sense them." "You mean the remaining immortal supporting badges are all in the divine illusionary realm?" "I think so." Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. "That gave me a fright. I thought I spoiled it." Hong Tailong heaved a sigh of relief and chuckled. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's continue searching. Let's go back to the divine illusionary realm." When the two of them passed by Utopia and were about to head to the divine illusionary realm, the metal wheel in Hong Tailong's hand suddenly clicked. The two of them were stunned. Hong Tailong was stunned. Can't really be spoiled, right? Why is it spinning here? Yu Qianqiu looked in the direction the metal wheel was pointing and said thoughtfully, "It's not spoiled. If I'm not wrong, Utopia should also have 2 immortal supporting badges." As expected, at the original location of the Ethereal Palace, which was also the place where the Fiend Celestial struck, Hong Tailong carried the metal wheel and found 2 immortal supporting badges. They belonged to Fernan and Guan Weiwu, the 2 elders of supporting Immortal Island. Yu Qianqiu did not participate in the search for the 2 tokens. The survivors of Utopia had already opened up a temporary cave, and he went to take a look. Inside the cave, everyone's sorrowful mood had finally improved. Those who were seriously injured were still being treated with all their might. In this regard, Lu Yanqing's medical ethics in saving lives were impeccable. She had always done her best and had never complained. As soon as Furong and the other women saw him, they immediately crowded around him. However, from their hesitant expressions, it could be seen that they still had lingering fears about the events of that day. Yu Qianqiu could only squeeze out a smile and comfort him. "It's okay. It's all in the past now." The women felt terrible, and they could tell that he was feeling terrible as well. No one mentioned the events of that day again. However, Zi, who was lying quietly on the stone platform, did not move at all. She looked up with lifeless eyes, and no matter who came over to talk to her, she did not react at all. She had just found out who her biological parents were, but she had lost them at the same time. It was easy to imagine the blow she had suffered. An innocent and adorable woman had lost her former spirit and had become like a living dead. Yuji, who was not used to being exposed under the sun, had survived the calamity because she had been in a remote and dark place. At that moment, she was guarding Zi and taking care of her. When she saw Yu Qianqiu walk over, she bowed respectfully and did not say a word. Yu Qianqiu touched Ziyi's face with both hands and called out a few times, but she remained indifferent. He immediately checked on her injuries and realized that they were fine. However, the trauma in her heart was probably not something that could be healed in a short period of time. When he saw her like this, he thought of the lively woman called Big Liar. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He silently turned and left. When he walked out of the cave, he let out a long sigh. I was wrong. He thought of the people who had died at his hands, whether directly or indirectly, and how sorrowful their friends and family must be. After Hong Tailong, who had found 2 immortal supporting badges in Utopia, met up with him, the 2 of them went to the place where Demon Monarch 3 Knight had led his Demon Path army to launch a sneak attack on Divine Illusionary Realm. Unexpectedly, they only found 35 immortal supporting badges in Divine Illusionary Realm, and the metal wheel did not react again. What's going on? There are still 71 more. Why is there no reaction again? Didn't you say that you didn't bring those people from Immortal Supporting Island out? Hong Tailong looked around and asked curiously. He could not wait to gather all the immortal supporting badges. He wanted to see the true appearance of the legendary unparalleled divine bow. He was very displeased that his clues kept getting cut off. Yu Qianqiu fell silent for a while before saying slowly, "When the Demon Path army launched a sneak attack, they must have snatched quite a number of things. At the same time, they brought the immortal supporting badges out of Divine Illusionary Realm. We will know once we try it outside." The moment the 2 of them appeared in the immortal realm, the metal wheel indeed reacted. Hong Tailong immediately cried out excitedly, "That's right. That's right. There's a reaction from the southeast." After searching the immortal realm, they found another 41 immortal supporting badges. The 2 of them then rushed to the netherworld realm and found another 25 pieces which they embedded into the metal wheel. The remaining 5 pieces were also gathered by the 2 of them in the demon realm. While they were searching in the demon realm, Yu Qianqiu also gathered all the 100 dark soldiers that had escaped. After spending more than a month, they went through the mortal realm, immortal realm, netherworld realm, demon realm, and divine illusionary realm. Finally, they gathered all 300 immortal supporting badges and embedded them into the metal wheel. The two of them were in a valley in the demon realm. They stared at the repaired metal wheel and carefully examined it again. Unfortunately, they were dizzy and their eyes were blurry. They could not find any clues. Hong Tailong caressed the immortal supporting badge's image of an island. He frowned and said, 150 sides with the words immortal supporting, facing up. 150 sides with the image of an island facing up. Could it be hinting that our unparalleled divine bow is still related to that immortal supporting island? But we checked it at immortal supporting island. There are no traces of the unparalleled divine bow on immortal supporting island. There might be something fishy. Let's return to immortal supporting island and try again. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the two of them disappeared from the demon realm. When the two of them reappeared on the supporting immortal island, Hong Tailong, who was carrying the metal wheel, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. Yu Qianqiu looked over and saw that the metal wheel in Hong Tailong's hand had actually started trembling. The 300 supporting immortal tokens that were inlaid on the wheel shone with a golden light at the same time, and all the metal rings on the wheel began spinning, either counterclockwise or clockwise. What's going on? Yu Qianqiu shouted. I don't know either. The moment we arrived, there was a strange movement. It seems like it is about to fly. Its strength is getting stronger and stronger. I can't hold on to it anymore. Quickly help me catch it. If it escapes, all our efforts will be wasted. Hong Tailong used all his strength to struggle to hold on to the spinning metal wheel. Yu Qianqiu quickly looked at the surrounding immortal supporting island and shouted resolutely, Hong Tailong, let it go and see what happens. Don't regret it if it escapes. Hong Tailong rolled his eyes unhappily. It seemed like he couldn't bear to let go of the treasure in his hands. But in the end, he still did as he was told. The key was that he couldn't control it anymore. It wasn't that he really wanted to let go. As soon as he let go, the metal wheel flew to a certain height in the air, and then stood upright, no longer flying. All the metal rings on it started spinning very quickly. Moreover, they were spinning faster and faster. It was a dazzling sight. At the same time, there was an endless amount of living beings' aura surging over from all directions and being sucked into the spinning wheel. Hong Tailong's eyes lit up as he exclaimed, Magical, magical. Could the Supreme God Bao really be sealed on this immortal supporting island? It's just that we can't find it with our abilities? Yu Qianqiu sensed the living being's aura surging over from all directions. In a certain direction, the human aura was the thickest. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He looked towards the direction where immortal supporting island was facing and muttered to himself, I think I know why it's hard for cultivators to reach the demigod stage in China's cultivation world. Could it be related to this matter? Suddenly, a dazzling golden light burst out from the rotating rings of the metal wheel in the air. It suddenly appeared and then disappeared. The entire metal wheel disappeared, leaving a circular void window in the sky. Faint, colorful rays of light shone out from the window. A majestic ancient aura also faintly seeped out from the window. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but fly up. When they came to the window and took a look, the two of them were dumbfounded and dumbfounded. Behind the void window was an endless starry sky. It was vast, deep, beautiful, and enchanting. In the illusory space of the universe, there was a seven-colored bow that was hundreds of feet long, as strong as the roots of an old tree. Both ends of the bow were pulled by a dreamy phantom bowstring that seemed to be composed of countless stars. It was shining with a dazzling luster that made one's mind ripple, like a rainbow of stars, enchanting one's soul. The entire bow was flowing with seven-colored light. It stood motionlessly in the universe, accepting the baptism of the sun, moon, and stars. The ancient aura of vicissitudes that pressed down on one's mind was endless. That was the glory of a supreme king that would never fade. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong slowly turned their heads and looked at each other. They exclaimed almost at the same time, Supreme God Bao! Hong Tailong was excited. He pulled his beard and hair as he waved his hands and shouted, It's really the Supreme God Bao. It's too beautiful. It's really good stuff. I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it. The ancient phoenix god had actually sealed the peerless divine bow in the vast universe without any fixed coordinates. Who could possibly find it in the boundless universe? It's actually hidden in the universe. This is 2F** king surprising. No wonder I couldn't find it on supporting Immortal Island. He laughed for a while. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and touched the window. When he realized that there was no obstruction, he immediately slipped in and flew straight towards the huge divine bow. He shouted excitedly and hugged it, kissing and kissing it. It was as if he wanted the treasure more than his life. Chapter 1237. However, that divine bow was too big. It floated quietly in the cosmos, reaching a length of over 100 zhang. Hong Tailong's huge head could be completely ignored as he stuck to the bow. He was like an ant climbing on the bow, like an ant that had found food and was dancing with joy. Although Yu Qianqiu was also a person whose eyes were opened by the sight of treasures, he was also extremely excited. However, compared to Hong Tailong, he was much more cautious. He reached out his hand to touch the edge of the window, but it easily brushed past. The window that connected the mortal world and the cosmos seemed like an illusion, as if it didn't exist. He stuck his head in to look around and confirmed that it was the boundless cosmos on the other side, while the mortal world was on the other side. The mystical scene amazed him. After hesitating for a while, he didn't dare to rush in without knowing anything like Hong Tailong. What if the window suddenly closed? What if it was a trap? He stared at Hong Tailong and coughed in envy. He waved his hand and shouted, "Hong Tailong, what are you so excited for? Hurry up and bring out the godly bow." So beautiful. Hong Tailong, who had floated to the dreamlike bowstring, was drooling while hugging it. Startled, he immediately flashed to the bow and tried to pull it back. However, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't move the bow at all. Roar! A dragon roar sounded, and Hong Tailong revealed his original form. He turned into a huge red dragon and circled around the bow. After wrapping his long body around the godly bow, he used all his strength to pull it back, but the godly bow still didn't budge. Hong Tailong grew anxious. He roared a few times and exerted his strength, but it was useless no matter how many times he tried. In the end, he relaxed like a lazy snake. Yu Qianqiu, who was dancing and cheering outside the window, snapped, "Brat, what are you looking at? Come and help me. You're such a huge guy, but you can't even move the bow. How dare you call yourself a dragon?" Yu Qianqiu said in disdain. Hong Tailong returned to his human form anxiously and said, "It's easy for you to say. Why don't you try? Do you think this is a piece of scrap metal? This is great God Yi's supreme godly bow. I don't think you can move it even with your cultivation." Bullshit. Yu Qianqiu looked around, reached out and waved his hand at the seemingly empty window and said, "If it weren't for the worry that this window would close at any time, I wouldn't be able to move a bow with my cultivation of the late-stage great god." What a joke! Hong Tailong was startled. He looked to his left and right as well. His expression changed drastically as he roared, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" He teleported out and touched his chest with some lingering fear. After heaving a sigh of relief, he suddenly realized something and said, "If I'm not afraid, what are you afraid of? You can come out at any time since you have the star bead." Yu Qianqiu was taken aback for a moment before he replied disapprovingly, "Who says I'm afraid?" He slowly flew in and tried to contact Utopia. When he realized that there was no problem, he was at ease and flashed behind the divine bow. He held the divine bow with both hands and used all his cultivation to push it toward the window. This time it was Hong Tailong's turn to cheer for Yu Qianqiu. However, to their disappointment, even with Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he was still unable to shake Yu Qianqiu in the slightest. Hong Tailong immediately pounded his chest and stomped his feet as he howled miserably, "It's over! It's over this time. It wasn't easy for me to find this treasure, but I can't get it out." Yu Qianqiu retracted his hand and flew around twice. A thought flashed in his mind as he thought of the heaven and earth splitting arrow. He chuckled and said, "That might not be the case. Why don't you see who it is? Raising his hand, he bit his finger and smeared his blood on the supreme divine bow. The blood was absorbed into the bow at a visible speed. In that instant, Yu Qianqiu felt that he and the divine bow were connected. With a thought, he reached out a palm. The supreme divine bow shone brightly in the vast starry sky and rapidly shrunk to the size of a normal bow. Then it slowly landed in his palm. Yu Qianqiu held onto the divine bow and teleported from the starry sky to the mortal world. He floated in the sky and laughed maniacally. Hong Tailong was filled with envy, so much so that he almost drooled. His eyes lit up as he stared at the divine bow in Xiao Chen's hand. He swallowed his saliva and said, "How could I forget that a divine item has to recognize its master? What a great treasure! What a great treasure! Yu Qianqiu, let me play with it." Before he finished speaking, the window that appeared in the void suddenly flashed with a golden light. It rapidly shrunk into a dot and disappeared into the void, as if it had never been there. The two of them were dumbfounded. They looked around and scanned the surroundings. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, "Where's that metal wheel? Why did it disappear as well? Who cares where it went? In any case, the supreme divine bow has been found. There's no point in keeping it." Hong Tailong retracted his gaze and extended his hand with envy. "Yu Qianqiu, let me play with the supreme divine bow." Yu Qianqiu didn't keep it to himself. He hung the divine bow in his hand and let Hong Tailong take it himself. However, Hong Tailong grabbed it with both hands. Even after using all his strength, he still couldn't move it. He immediately groaned in annoyance. "If I knew this would happen, I would have dripped my blood on it to recognize its master. Hurry up and test its power. Let me broaden my horizons." Holding the seven-colored bow in his hand, Yu Qianqiu had a solemn expression on his face. He could feel the vastness of the supreme divine bow. It wasn't that the energy within was tremendous, but he suddenly felt like he was reaching out and grabbing the universe. No matter how high his cultivation was, he wouldn't be able to figure out the depth of the supreme divine bow. Suddenly, a feeling of having the world in my hands surged in his heart. Hong Tailong clasped his hands together and said excitedly, "Heaven and earth splitting arrow. Knock your heaven and earth splitting arrow and shoot it." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. He didn't do that. He held the seven-colored bow with one hand and pulled the dreamlike bowstring with the other. However, he realized that he couldn't pull the bowstring at all. He let out a high and exerted force with both his arms, wanting to pull the bowstring. As he exerted all of his cultivation, the bowstring, which looked like a dreamy nebula, gradually began to curve. However, it was this slight curve that seemed to affect the atmosphere of the entire heaven and earth. The airflow between the heavenly swords trembled slightly along with the bowstring. Hong Tailong's body was pushed by an indescribable and terrifying force, as though his body was going to be torn apart. Hong Tailong's expression instantly changed. He lowered his head and looked down. The entire supporting immortal island was being pushed by an indescribable and terrifying force. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked open, sinking into the sea. In the blink of an eye, sky-high waves were raised from the boundless blue ocean. The wind blew and the clouds surged. No one knew where the dark clouds came from. Lightning bolts flashed in the dark clouds as well. It was as if a slight movement of the bowstring could change the world. "No! With my cultivation, I can't pull the bowstring at all." Yu Qianqiu's face flushed red as he pulled the bowstring. He loosened his grip and released the bowstring. The airflow between the heaven and earth shook as well. Hong Tailong staggered from that indescribable and terrifying force again. He looked at the supreme godly bow in Yu Qianqiu's hands. The muscles on his face twitched. He clenched his teeth and said, "What a terrifying force. If the bowstring is really pulled, I'm afraid the heaven and earth will really collapse. It's too terrifying." The huge waves on the vast sea gradually subsided. The thunderbolts in the sky instantly disappeared. The dark clouds rolled and dispersed. "Good fella. It's too powerful. No wonder the great god E could divide time and space with a single arrow. Sigh. Such a godly weapon, even if it's in my hands, it's like a natural mote in the Milky Way." It's too far away from me. It's in my hands, but it's out of my reach. Yu Qianqiu stroked the supreme godly bow in his hands and smiled bitterly. Suddenly, a few majestic auras descended from the sky, suppressing the two so much that they didn't dare to move. The rippling blue sea instantly became as still as stagnant water. The two of them raised their heads to look at the sky, and their expressions changed at the same time. They saw 7 pairs of dreamlike giant eyes suddenly appear in the sky. The 7 pairs of eyes were either filled with disdain, gratification, shock, greed, or envy. All of them seemed to be focused on the supreme divine bow in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Hong Tailong stared at the pair of gratified eyes and mumbled dumbfoundedly, "Old ancestor coiling dragon." Yu Qianqiu stared at the pair of disdainful and cold eyes. He was too familiar with those eyes. It wasn't the first time he saw them. They were the eyes of a demonic god. "I was wondering why you guys were so confident. So it's because you want to rely on Yi's supreme godly bow to win. Humph. It's no different from scrap metal in his hands. It's a joke to use it against me. It's perfect to give it to me to make up for the loss of the devil blade. If any of you dare to have any ideas about it, don't blame me for being impolite. Even if it's in your hands, you won't be able to unleash its full power. This supreme godly bow is mine." The demonic god's confident voice came coldly from the sky. The pair of demonic eyes moved to the sides and looked at the other 5 pairs of eyes in the sky. It seemed to be a warning. Then, it quietly disappeared from the sky. Following that, another 4 pairs of eyes reluctantly retreated into the sky. The other 2 pairs of eyes smiled at each other and quietly disappeared as well. Demonic god! Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth and tightly gripped the supreme godly bow in his hands. He really wanted to kill the enemy, but he was powerless to do so. He had nowhere to vent the anger in his heart. He turned his head and roared at Hong Tailong. "Why did 7 pairs of eyes appear at the same time? Who are the other 6? Hong Tailong came back to his senses. He shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Who else could it be? You know the demonic god, I know the coiling dragon ancestor, and the other 5 must be the ancient phoenix god, the ancient light god, the sky god, the water god, and the thunder god. In the god realm, only these 7 true gods can ignore distance and appear at any place at any time. Other than them, there can't be anyone else. The ancient phoenix god is also here. Why didn't you say so earlier? I could have asked Shuer how she is." Yu Qianqiu had nowhere to vent his anger. He grabbed Hong Tailong and roared, "If you don't ask me, how would I know what you want to know? Even you are stunned, let alone me. Besides, the 7 true gods of the god realm have all revealed their Dharma idol at the same time. How would I dare to express any opinion in front of them?" Hong Tailong revealed a "you are unreasonable" expression and waved his hand. Chapter 12:38. Even though they had obtained the unparalleled divine weapon, the supreme divine bow, the 2 of them were not happy when they returned to Utopia. They had heard the Fian Celestial's ruthless words. He had threatened the gods of the divine world on the spot and pointed out that the supreme divine bow belonged to him. The gods were not angry at all. Once the Fian Celestial wanted to take the supreme divine bow, who could protect it? It was clear that he would deal with Yu Qianqiu sooner or later. However, what puzzled Yu Qianqiu was why the Fian Celestial had not made a move yet. Without a solution, he could only pin his hopes on by Changchun and hope that his monstrous master would create another miracle. Yu Qianqiu took Shen Yu to the celestial barrier again. After throwing Shen Yu back to Utopia, he quietly walked along the edge of the transverse mountains alone. Just as he was about to approach by Changchun's cultivation place, he saw a huge tomb floating in the air from afar, reflecting a dark red light under the moonlight. The tomb of the wind god. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He did not expect the wind god to be waiting here. Clearly, he was not waiting for him as a prophet. Could it be that he was waiting for Bai Changchun to come out and seek revenge for Tianfeng and Earthwind? Yu Qianqiu wanted to find a place to hide and watch, but who knew that the giant tomb floating in the air would turn around and face him? The tombstone was facing him, and a powerful aura locked onto him. Damn! I've been discovered. Yu Qianqiu's heart trembled. Without another word, he flashed back to Utopia. It was better to escape first. After returning to Utopia, Yu Qianqiu suddenly realized that all the trouble he had stirred up in the 3 realms over the years was simply a joke. A single sentence from the demonic god had practically determined his fate of waiting to be slaughtered. He did not have the slightest ability to resist, and there was no place for him in this vast world. Endless frustration surged in his heart. Unknowingly, he had arrived on an island overseas, where Bai Suzhen was cultivating. Every time he suffered a setback, he would always think of Bai Suzhen for comfort. The entire island was shrouded in a dense demonic aura. As soon as Yu Qianqiu stepped on the island, the dense demonic aura immediately retracted into a valley. Yu Qianqiu flew in the direction where the demonic aura retracted. In the meadow that was filled with flowers, Bai Suzhen sat cross-legged with her eyes closed. Seemingly sensing his arrival, Bai Suzhen slowly opened her eyes and stood up. Yu Qianqiu landed in front of her, and they looked at each other in silence. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shivered inexplicably in his heart. Cold. At this moment he only felt cold, thoroughly cold, cold to the bones, cold to the heart. Bai Suzhen stared at him indifferently. Her eyes were devoid of any emotion, and her dainty features were devoid of any expression. She looked at him as if he was a stranger on the street. You've broken through to the minor god realm in such a short time. Congratulations! Yu Qianqiu squeezed a smile on his face, trying to make his tone as intimate as possible, but even he could feel the distance in his words. Facing Bai Suzhen, he suddenly didn't know what to say. Ever since they met, the two of them had never been so far apart. Bai Suzhen didn't say anything. She looked at him calmly and slowly untied her gown with both hands. Under Yu Qianqiu's dumbfounded expression, Bai Suzhen took off her clothes and stood naked in front of him. She had a face that could topple nations. Her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. Her waist was enchanting. She had 2 red bumps on her full, snow-white breasts. Her long, slender, jade-like legs were luxuriant. One side of her perky buttocks made Yu Qianqiu swallow hard. He had yet to return to his senses and didn't know why she was acting like this all of a sudden. Bai Suzhen quickly gave him the answer. She walked over with her slender legs and personally took off all his clothes. Then, she hugged him tightly. The two of them hugged each other naked. The passion in Yu Qianqiu's heart was quickly ignited. The two of them fell onto the beautiful meadow, rubbing against each other and rolling around. Yu Qianqiu had finally found a way to vent all the pent-up grievances in his heart. They rammed into each other to their heart's content, venting crazily. Round after round of passionate entanglement. It was as if they wanted to toss and turn until the seas ran dry and the rocks crumbled. The beautiful meadow was ravaged into a sorry state. After a long time, the two of them fell to the ground in each other's arms, exhausted. Took a while for their breathing to calm down. Yu Qianqiu, who was still immersed in the aftertaste, was suddenly pushed to the side. Bai Suzhen picked up her clothes and slowly put them on. With her back facing him, she walked to a place not far away and lightly said, "Is there anything else? Don't disturb me if there's nothing else. I still need to cultivate. You can come and look for me when you need me." Yu Qianqiu sat up abruptly and looked at her. After a long time, he squeezed out a sentence with a smile on his face. It was unknown if he was saying it for her or to comfort himself. It seems like the side effects of the blue sea essence on your body have not subsided. I don't blame you. I'll come and look for you when you recover. He picked up his clothes and did not wear them. Instead, he carried them in his hands and ran away naked with a desolate expression. Outside the cave abode that the people from Utopia had temporarily opened up, Hong Tailong had written the word, demonic god, on the ground. He held a tree branch in his hand and walked around the word, occasionally stabbing it a few times to vent his anger. It seemed like he was thinking of a way to deal with the demonic god. Yu Qianqiu, who had returned after adjusting his clothes, landed beside him. He stared at the word for a while and suddenly said, "Hong Tailong, let's go to the netherworld divine manor." Hong Tai Long looked at him with a puzzled expression. He frowned and said, "What do you want to do?" "To the divine realm. Waiting here is no different from waiting for death. Even if I die, I at least want to know what happened to Schwerer," Yu Qianqiu casually explained, not allowing him to ask any further. With a domineering wave of his hand, the two of them disappeared from the spot. In the Netherworld Divine Manor, at the peak of the continuous coiling Dragon Mountain range, the two of them stood on the peak and looked around. They did not discover anything out of the ordinary. Yu Qianqiu looked at the beautiful surroundings and frowned. "Are you sure that there's a passageway to the divine realm left behind by the coiling dragon patriarch here? Are you sure you want to go to the divine realm now?" Hong Tai Long stared at the sky and asked. "Yes." Yu Qianqiu's answer was very certain. "Then I'll say the unpleasant things first. If the coiling dragon patriarch has any problems, you'll have to help me," said Hong Tai Long nervously as he looked at him. Yu Qianqiu nodded expressionlessly and said, "No problem. Remember your words. Don't throw stones at me with your spit. I can't afford to take it," Hong Tai Long said. Then his figure suddenly elongated into a red shadow, revealing his dragon form. With a roar, he shook his head and waved his tail as he soared into the sky. The dragon soared in the sky, looking down at all directions. However, he didn't find any clues. Hong Tai Long, who had transformed into a dragon, suddenly let out a muffled groan. He opened his mouth and spat out a large amount of blood rain. He let out a deafening roar. "With my dragon blood as a sacrifice to the divine realm, why did the dragon clan shut me out?" As soon as he said that, a thunderclap suddenly resounded in the clear sky. The blood rain that was falling from the sky suddenly stopped. A strange, profound light appeared in the sky and spiraled. The blood rain that was floating in the sky flew back and was completely devoured by that revolving, profound light. After a while, the clouds in the surroundings suddenly moved. That revolving, profound light expanded rapidly, as if a huge hole had opened up in the sky. "It's done. The passageway to the divine realm left behind by the coiling dragon patriarch is indeed here." Hong Tai Long, who was in the sky, cried out in surprise. He instantly transformed into his human form and waved his hand at the dumbfounded Yu Qianqiu. He shouted, "The divine realm's gate has been opened. It won't be long before it closes again." "Yu Qianqiu, why are you still in a daze? I don't have that much dragon blood to waste. Let's go." Yu Qianqiu nodded with a solemn expression. He turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. He met up with Hong Tai Long and both of them entered that revolving profound light. Not long later, just as Hong Tai Long said, that profound light quietly disappeared in the sky. Divine Realm, Mount Divine Dragon. Under the vast expanse of mist, lakes and mountains could be seen. The mountains towered into the clouds, and the mountains were covered with lingji and immortal herbs, extending into the sea of clouds. Between the mountains, there were giant dragons stretching out their claws, giant dragons soaring through the clouds, and giant dragons coiling around the mountains. The majestic atmosphere could be felt, and the aura of an emperor soared into the sky. A profound light suddenly appeared in front of a huge plateau that had been abandoned for a long time. It attracted the attention of the dragons in the mountains. They raised their heads and stared at it with their huge eyes. Two figures suddenly spat out from the profound light. They were none other than Hong Tai Long and Yu Qianqiu. "Who dares to trespass on Mount Divine Dragon?" A stern shout rang out. Hundreds of giant dragons of various colors instantly flashed over and surrounded the plateau. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they stared at the two of them. Red dragons, black dragons, white dragons, purple dragons, azure dragons, yellow dragons, suddenly being stared at fiercely by so many terrifying flying fellows. Even though Yu Qianqiu was used to big scenes, he was still shocked. He could not help but nudge Hong Tai Long and said weakly, "Is this how you dragons treat your guests?" Hong Tai Long looked around in a daze. Suddenly, an uncontrollable joy blossomed on his face. He raised his arms up high and laughed out loud. "I, Hong Tai Long, am back again. I, Hong Tai Long, am finally back," it's really Hong Tai Long. Hong Tai Long, it's really you. Hong Tai Long, I haven't seen you for so many years. Where have you been? When the ferocious dragons of various colors realized that they were companions of the same race, they immediately retracted their intimidating auras. They shook their heads and wagged their tails in the air in front of the plateau, either greeting or laughing. Their attitudes instantly became friendly. Yu Qianqiu finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, he saw a small black dragon squeezing through the crowd of dragons around them. As it circled around the two of them, it exclaimed, "Big Brother Yu. It's you, Big Brother Yu. Why are you here?" The crowd of dragons was stunned. Their attention started to shift from Hong Tai Long to Yu Qianqiu. Hong Tai Long asked curiously, "Yu Qianqiu, what's going on? How does he know you?" No matter how small the small black dragon was, it was still much bigger than Yu Qianqiu. As its ferocious dragon head approached, Yu Qianqiu leaned back and maintained an arm's-length distance from the dragon head. He smiled awkwardly and said, "I have a common face, so it's common for misunderstandings to occur. Brother Dragon, you must have mistaken me for someone else. It can't be wrong. It's you, Big Brother Yu. It can't be wrong." The small black dragon wagged its tail excitedly. It was just short of sticking out its tongue to lick the saliva on his face. However, with a flash of black light, a little fellow with his hair tied up in a bun appeared. He hugged his arm and said happily, "Big Brother Yu, I'm little Yuan. You even hit me before. Have you forgotten?" Chapter 1239. Little Yuan. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Looking at the lively and cheerful little guy in front of him, he immediately remembered that it was little Yuan of the Li Palace's water tribe who had successfully leaped through the Dragon Gate in the Underworld River. Ever since this little guy had been taken away by the Pegasus, he had not seen him again. He did not expect that he had snuck into the dragon race and was doing quite well. His face was full of smiles, and just as he was about to rub little Yuan's head in a friendly manner, Hong Tai Long stretched his head over and asked curiously, "Yu Qianqiu, what? You've interacted with the dragon race before you met me? How come I've never heard you mention it before? When did you beat him?" "I beat him?" Yu Qianqiu's hand, which was just about to stretch out, froze. His gaze shifted from little Yuan to the 100 pairs of eyes staring at him in the sky. The muscles on his face twitched as he cursed in his heart. Of all the things this little bastard could have said, he just had to say that I beat him. Wasn't he just looking for trouble for Lousy? Damn it! Could it be that he now has a backer and wants to seek revenge on Lousy? Hee. This little brother must have mistaken me for someone else. Other than Hong Tai Long, I don't think I know any other dragon race. Yu Qianqiu immediately denied it. His hand, which had been about to rub little Yuan's head, changed to pushing away little Yuan's arm. Unexpectedly, little Yuan hugged him even tighter and shook his head repeatedly. "Big Brother Yu, think carefully. I am little Yuan from the Underworld River. It was you who helped me succeed in leaping through the Dragon Gate. Could it be that you've forgotten?" Yu Qianqiu felt very awkward. From time to time, he would sneak a glance at the expressions of the dragons, hesitating on whether to admit it or not. Underworld River, leaping through the Dragon Gate? Hong Tai Long raised his eyebrows. He could tell something from Yu Qianqiu's expression. Having interacted with Yu Qianqiu for so long, he knew that this guy was a cunning businessman and what he was worried about. He immediately chuckled and said, "So be it. It's just beating him up. Brat, you've done countless bad things, yet you still care about such a small matter. Look, he doesn't even care. Why are you still pretending to be confused?" Being exposed, Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his teeth itched. However, a look of sudden realization appeared on his face. He pulled Xiao Yuan with great surprise and said, "Xiao Yuan, it's you? Little Yuan, is that really you? Is that really you? Are you really the little Yuan that I helped to leap through the Dragon Gate?" The last sentence was especially emphasized, as if he was telling all the dragons present that it was thanks to his help that this fellow was able to sneak into the dragon clan. Hong Tai Long elbowed him and shook his head. "Hey, You've done it, you've done it. It's not a big deal, is it worth it? My dragon clan isn't as petty as you think. He was still winking at her. Sometimes, getting beaten up was a small matter, but losing face was a big deal. Yu Qianqiu was enraged, truly enraged. It was as though he had been greatly wronged. He straightened his neck, his face flushed red with rage, and he said, Hong Tai Long, what do you mean by this? I just didn't think of it for a moment. Stop gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. All right, I'm a villain, and you're a gentleman. Are you satisfied now? Hong Tai Long snorted disdainfully, as though saying, I believe you, but do you believe yourself? Such a ruminating expression made Yu Qianqiu even more furious. However, since the other party had already admitted his mistake, he was instantly at a loss for words. Even though the two of them were undermining each other, the messy group of dragons in the sky could tell that this person had a close relationship with Hong Tai Long. Just as some dragons were clamoring for Hong Tai Long to introduce Yu Qianqiu, a white cloud slowly floated over from the clouds of the Myriad Mountains summit. The dragons immediately fell silent and moved to the side. Xiao Yuan also stuck out his tongue and moved to the side. On the white cloud stood a majestic and mighty man. His eyes were bright and piercing, and he looked at Hong Tai Long and Yu Qianqiu, who were on the plateau below, with a dignified expression. Hong Tai Long greets Elder Long Jiang. Hong Tai Long respectfully saluted. Yu Qianqiu had always believed in the principle of being polite to others. In addition, he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation, so he naturally didn't care who he was and just followed Hong Tai Long's actions and bowed. As expected, Hong Tai Long has returned. Elder Long Jiang nodded slightly, but his gaze swept back and forth between Yu Qianqiu's body. After a while, he said in a loud and clear voice, The old ancestor knows that the two of you have arrived. He has issued a decree for the two of you to head to the Star Palace to pay your respects. After saying that, he turned around and slowly flew towards the main peak that towered into the clouds. It's over. Yu Qianqiu was instantly dumbfounded. He had originally wanted to find a chance to slip away and inquire about Wu Lishua's whereabouts. He didn't expect that the coiling dragon old ancestor would find out the moment he arrived and even summon him. He was now starting to worry about the matter of him falsely accepting the punishment mission on behalf of the heaven. Yes. Hong Tai Long bowed again with a solemn expression. He pulled the dumbfounded Yu Qianqiu and indicated for him to follow. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth and steeled his heart. In any case, he wouldn't be afraid of an itch once he had enough lice. If he really couldn't do it, he would just flee. A silver ball stealthily slid down his trousers and into his feet. Together with Hong Tai Long, they slowly followed behind that elder Long Jiang. After arriving at the main peak of the Divine Dragon Mountain range, they surveyed the surrounding mountains, feeling as though they were looking down on all the other mountains. There was a dazzling golden platform at the top of the mountain. The flight of stairs led diagonally into the void, and at the end of the flight of stairs was a mass of revolving profound light. When the three of them arrived at the end of the flight of stairs, Elder Long Jiang kept the cloud beneath his feet and took the lead to step into the profound light, disappearing. The two extremely nervous fellows looked at each other. Hong Tai Long even looked at Yu Qianqiu with a pleading expression and bowed repeatedly. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. He thought to himself, it's not that I'm not loyal, but I might not even be able to protect myself. How would I have the ability to put in a good word for you? Brother, good luck to you. He threw caution to the wind and also stepped into the profound light. Hong Tai Long weakly followed behind him. The moment they entered the profound door, their eyes suddenly turned into another world. They were already in a vast golden plaza. The entire golden plaza floated quietly in the starry sky. There were no buildings or buildings. The distant starry sky was dotted with stars, vast and boundless, mysterious and unfathomable, just like the vault of heaven. In the middle of the plaza, there was a gigantic octagonal golden platform. A gigantic golden dragon coiled in the void above it. Yu Qianqiu had to raise his head high in order to see the majestic head of the gigantic dragon staring at him. Its eyes were filled with depth and vicissitudes of life. Below the octagonal golden platform, there were 4 golden pillars on each side. 7 gigantic dragons of different colors coiled around the pillars, also looking at Yu Qianqiu. However, their bodies were almost twice the size of the gigantic dragon coiled in the void. The powerful aura of the dragon race caused the entire Golden Plaza to feel as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. When Elder Long Jiang saw the 2 of them entering, he immediately turned into a gigantic red dragon and flew toward the empty golden pillar on the left. He coiled around it, not moving an inch like the other divine dragons. Hong Tailong pays his respects to the old ancestor and the 8 elders. Hong Tailong quickly walked up, knelt down, and lowered his head. Wasn't this greeting a little too much? Yu Qianqiu's gaze paused on Hong Tailong, who was lying on the ground, and the corners of his lips twitched. He felt that if it was a blessing, it would not be a calamity. If it was a calamity, he would not be able to avoid it. He first contacted Utopia, and after confirming that there were no problems, he also strode forward, bowed, and said, Yu Qianqiu pays his respects to the coiled dragon god and the 8 elders. Sai is here. This day has finally arrived. A deep and aged voice rang out from the octagonal golden platform, reverberating in the surroundings. A pair of gigantic dragon eyes stared at the unmoving Hong Tailong from Yu Qianqiu's body and asked, Hong Tailong, do you admit to your crime? I. Hong Tailong raised his head from his kneeling position. He first looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was standing to the side like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. Just as he was about to say a few words in defense, the 8 golden pillars immediately responded with suppressed anger. Hong Tailong shuddered and obediently prostrated himself, saying, Hong Tailong admits to his crime. You've wasted 100,000 years. I punish you to go into seclusion in the Long Yao blessed land for 100,000 years. Do you admit to your punishment? The coiled dragon god's voice boomed out once again. Ah! Hong Tailong seemed to have heard something unbelievable. He slowly raised his head and was stunned, thinking that he had heard wrongly. Yu Qianqiu originally wanted to let Hong Tailong pray for himself. However, when he heard that he had to go into seclusion for 100,000 years in some godforsaken place, coupled with Hong Tailong's stupefied look, he naturally treated it as a very severe punishment. Thinking about how they were friends, if he didn't even dare to say a word to help his friend at a critical moment, he would be too much of a beast. He immediately coughed and cupped his hands, saying, Coiled dragon god, Hong Tailong didn't do anything wrong. Isn't this punishment too severe? It's not severe, it's not severe. I couldn't ask for more. Hong Tailong hurriedly grabbed onto Yu Qianqiu's trousers and shook his head repeatedly. The members of the Dragon Clan all knew that Long Yao Blessed Land wasn't a place that just anyone could enter. Only the elites among the elites of the Dragon Clan, or those who had made great contributions to the Dragon Clan, would have the chance to enter and cultivate, let alone cultivate for 100,000 years. On the surface, it looked like Hong Tailong was being punished to go into seclusion, but in reality, a great fortune had landed on Hong Tailong. It was practically a reward. However, how could an outsider like Yu Qianqiu know about this? Hong Tailong, water must have entered your brain. I'm punishing you to go into seclusion for 100,000 years, and you couldn't ask for more? I'll say it in advance. It's not that I don't want to help you, but you asked for it. When the time comes, don't blame me for not being loyal. Yu Qianqiu transmitted a message. Hong Tailong immediately replied, I appreciate your good intentions, but you don't know that Long Yao Blessed Land is a place that every disciple of the Dragon Clan dreams of entering. Not to mention that it's a rare place for cultivation. There are countless delicious food and fun things to do there. I'll be staying there for 100,000 years. Even in my dreams, I never thought that there would be such a good thing. Don't spoil my plans, or I'll hate you for the rest of my life. What kind of joke is this? Are you messing with me? There's such a good thing? Is this still considered a punishment? Who knows what's going on? Maybe the old ancestor is too old and made a slip of the tongue. However, with his status, It's not good for him to go back on his words. If you remind him, wouldn't that be giving him a chance to change his words? Could it be that coiled dragon god had really gone senile? It couldn't be. Yu Qianqiu looked suspiciously at the giant golden dragon lying in the void. Chapter 1240. Seeing Hong Tailong admit his mistake and accept his punishment, Great God Coiling Dragon said, "Go!" Below the giant golden coiling dragon, a strange profound light appeared on the octagonal golden dais. Clearly, it was another exit that led to another place. Hong Tailong crawled up gratefully, respectfully and devoutly walking towards the octagonal golden dais. There was an uncontrollable joy on his face. Walking up the golden dais, just as he was about to step into the profound light, Hong Tailong seemed to have thought of something. He stopped and turned around to look at Yu Qianqiu, who was standing there in a daze. When she thought about how she could hide in the Long Yao blessed land to enjoy her blessings without any disaster. But this brat had to bear the blow of the demon god alone. She felt a little sorry for him. She bowed slightly with an apologetic look in her eyes, then turned around resolutely and disappeared in the profound light. The profound light on the golden dais disappeared. Yu Qianqiu was still in a dream. The giant golden dragon floating in the air had already shone with a golden light and condensed into a bronze-skinned, muscular man. He stood on the octagonal golden dais with his bare upper body and feet. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked indifferently, "Yu Qianqiu, what is your purpose in coming to my divine dragon mountain?" Yu Qianqiu was slightly shocked. He didn't expect the famous great god coiling dragon to look like this. He came back to his senses and replied respectfully, "Junior has a beloved girlfriend who was brought to the divine realm by the Phoenix god from the divine void realm's divine Phoenix temple. Because I was worried about her safety, I followed Hong Tailong to the divine realm. I wanted to borrow the divine dragon mountain to look for the Phoenix god and find out about my girlfriend's situation. He was worried that the other party would ask him about the matter of falsely receiving the punishment on behalf of the heaven. Who would have thought that the other party didn't mention it at all? He guessed that the other party might not know about it yet. I see. Great God Coiling Dragon was like a farmer's uncle. Although he looked down from above, he smiled amiably and asked, "The Phoenix God's Yuchen Palace is not a place that anyone can enter. Are you confident that you can meet her?" "No." Yu Qianqiu admitted it honestly, then took out the supreme divine bow and offered it with both hands. This is the supreme divine bow this junior had painstakingly obtained. If the coiling dragon great god is willing to recommend me, this junior is willing to offer this divine bow to senior. From the moment he stepped into the Star Palace and laid his eyes on coiling dragon, he had already been prepared to use the supreme divine bow to avert any calamities. When the time came, he would spread the news that he had gifted the supreme divine bow to coiling dragon and see if he could divert the demon god's attention. At the very least, he would be able to divert his attention away from him. Hopefully, he would be able to buy some time for his monstrous master to come out of seclusion. Perhaps he would be able to convince Coiling Dragon to lend him a hand in a time of crisis. This guy was now at the end of his life as a great god, but once he was forced into a corner, he once again brought out his old habit of bribery. He didn't feel embarrassed at all. As long as he could save his life, he was willing to do anything even more despicable. This was the survival principle of a nobody. When the 8 colored divine dragons on the 8 golden pillars saw him take out the supreme divine bow, their eyes all widened in shock. Clearly, they all knew of the supreme divine bow's prestige. They all turned to look at Coiling Dragon Great God, wondering if he would accept it. Coiling Dragon Great God looked at Yu Qianqiu with an enigmatic smile and said, "I appreciate your good intentions, but since you're going to see the Phoenix Great God, why don't you keep the divine bow and give it to her? However, I'm also going to the Yuchen Palace. Seeing as you're a friend of my dragon race, I can bring you along." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't think that he would be unable to give away such a treasure. His plan had failed, and he could only sheath the divine bow in embarrassment. However, when he heard that Coiling Dragon Great God was willing to take him to see the Phoenix Great God, He still thanked him with great gratitude, and said, "This junior will repay senior's great kindness in the future." Coiling Dragon Great God chuckled and said, "Then come with me." As he said that, he casually drew a line beside him, and a void crack appeared beside him. He turned around and disappeared into it. Yuchencho was shocked by the Coiling Dragon Great God's method of tearing space apart. Looking at the dark and mysterious void crack, he didn't know whether he should go in or not. After all, he had never tried this thing before. However, Coiling Dragon Great God's questioning voice came from the void crack. "Are you afraid that I'll harm you?" No, if Coiling Dragon Great God wanted to harm me, you wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Yuchencho flattered him repeatedly, and then braced himself and flashed into the void crack. The moment he entered, he saw thunder and lightning crisscrossing everywhere in the endless darkness. An inexplicable turbulence tugged at him, and he didn't know where it was going to take him. Even with his late-stage great god cultivation, he couldn't resist at all, and he immediately broke out in cold sweat. Just as he was about to contact Utopia and leave, a ball of light suddenly shot over and wrapped him within, immediately cutting off the pulling of the spatial turbulence. Coiling Dragon Great God's tall figure also appeared in front of him, and he said with a faint smile, "There's no need to panic." The ball of light that wrapped around Yuchencho immediately followed Coiling Dragon Great God and flew rapidly. After a while, there was light in front of him, and before Yuchencho could see clearly what was going on, he found himself in a vast jade square. The surroundings and the starry sky above him were brilliant, and the scene was just like the Coiling Dragon Star Palace from before. The only difference was that one was a gold palace and the other was a jade palace. "Coiling Dragon is here." A heavenly female voice rang out, and Yuchencho, who felt like he was in a dream, looked over. He saw a beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure, dragging an indescribably gorgeous dress as she slowly walked over in a noble and serene manner. It would not be an exaggeration to say that her beauty was earth-shattering. Even though Yuchencho had seen many things, he had never seen such a beautiful woman before. In particular, her temperament was as dazzling as the sun, moon, and stars, making it impossible for anyone to have any thoughts of blasphemy against her. It was as if she was a supreme goddess in everyone's heart. Coiling Dragon Great God nodded and said with a smile, "As arbitrators, we naturally can't be late." He then looked around and said, "I believe the others won't miss it today either. They've been waiting for this moment for countless years, so they naturally won't miss it." As the noble and beautiful woman spoke, her eyes fell on Yuchencho, and she nodded with a faint smile as a greeting. She didn't ask who Yuchencho was or why he was here. Yuchencho woke up from his daze and naturally guessed who the other party was. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Junior Yuchencho pays respect to Phoenix Great God." A playful smile appeared on Coiling Dragon Great God's face as he explained, "He specially came to find you, and he has a gift for you." "A gift for me?" Phoenix Great God looked at Yuchencho in surprise. Even though she was well-versed in worldly affairs, she couldn't figure out what Yuchencho wanted to give her. Coiling Dragon Great God winked at Yuchencho and said, "Don't you have something to ask Phoenix Great God?" Yes. Yuchencho repeatedly responded, took out the Supreme Divine Bow, and presented it to Phoenix Great God with both hands. Phoenix Great God took the Supreme Divine Bow suspiciously, frowned, and said, "Do you want to give me the Supreme Divine Bow?" She was a little unhappy in her heart. Although she hadn't been in contact with Yuchencho, she also paid attention to him in secret. She knew that there were many women around Yuchencho, and coupled with Coiling Dragon Great God's ambiguous attitude, she couldn't help but think that Yuchencho's unwarranted attentiveness was because he had lustful intentions towards her. "Yes, it's for Senior." Yuchencho nervously rubbed his hands and said with a flattering smile, "Junior accidentally entered the Phoenix Temple in the divine illusionary realm, and my beloved girlfriend was involved in the restriction left by Senior. I hope Senior can be magnanimous and let my girlfriend go." Phoenix Great God was a little dumbfounded. It seemed that this guy didn't fancy her beauty, but wanted to bribe her. On the side, Coiling Dragon Great God was already somewhat overjoyed. He seemed to be secretly laughing, and his smile was somewhat similar to Hong Tailong's. They were both from the dragon race. Since you have obtained the supreme divine bow, don't you know that it was originally sealed by me? If I wanted it, would I need you to give it to me? Phoenix Great God didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he pushed the divine bow back into Yu Qianzhou's arms, giving it back to him. That's right. How could I forget this? Yu Qianzhou was stunned for a moment. The other party obviously didn't like it, so he could only put away the divine bow and asked weakly, "How is Junior's girlfriend now?" There are some things he still doesn't know. Coiling Dragon Great God chimed in with a smile. He came to the immortal realm to save his girlfriend. He is worried that she will suffer some bad treatment in your hands. The Phoenix Great God was at a loss for words when he heard that. He looked at Yu Qianzhou's expectant eyes and didn't know whether to laugh or cry again. Wu Lixue and my Phoenix race are fated, and she has already inherited my Phoenix cloud robe. In the future, when the heavens descend, there will definitely be a place for her. She will become the Phoenix goddess and serve me by my side sooner or later. Why would I harm her? You are thinking too much. Shuer wants to become a god? This thought flashed in Yu Qianzhou's mind, and he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Then his expression changed greatly, and he said, "No way! She is my woman. How can she serve you by your side?" As if he also felt that his words were inappropriate, he quickly corrected himself. "I don't think Shuer herself is willing to become a god." Yu Qianzhou, don't be greedy. You already have enough women by your side. Don't tell me you don't want to let my Phoenix goddess go? I advise you to give up on this idea. The Phoenix Great God shook her head indifferently and refused, but the way she looked at Yu Qianzhou was a little strange. She realized that this guy was really bold. Most people would tremble in fear when they saw her, but not only was this guy not afraid for a woman, he even dared to bargain with her. Yu Qianzhou still wanted to argue, but he suddenly heard a thunderclap in the starry sky. He turned to look, only to see a crack in the void being torn open, and in a flash of lightning, a strong man carrying a sledgehammer walked out of the lightning. The sledgehammer in his hand was surrounded by lightning as he strode over. Then, another crack in the void was torn open, and a white-robed man shrouded in white light walked out of it. Before Yu Qianzhou could even come to his senses, another crack in the void appeared on the other side, and a yellow-robed man walked out with his hands clasped behind his back with an arrogant expression on his face. The last person to appear was a woman as beautiful as the goddess of Luo, and her beauty was not much inferior to that of the Phoenix Great God. Her dress was wrapped around her arm, and she floated over with a smile on her face as she stepped on the white waves. Chapter 1241. The one holding the lightning hammer was the god of thunder. The one shrouded in white light was the god of light. The arrogant yellow-robed man was the god of heaven, and the one treading on the waves was the water god. The four ancient gods appeared together, along with the phoenix and coiling dragon. Such a scene was rare even in the god realm. The four arrived unhurriedly and nodded at the phoenix and coiling dragon. "It's been a long time since my Yuchen palace has been so lively," Ancient God Phoenix said with a smile. Ancient God Light said with a gloomy expression, "Back then, the demon god wreaked havoc in the god realm. If the two of you had agreed to work with us, the ancient gods of darkness and life wouldn't have fallen, and we wouldn't have allowed the demon god to become a great threat. I'm sure the meeting of our old friends in Yuchen Palace will be even more lively." Ancient God Coiling Dragon looked at him and said with a faint smile, "Why did the demon god wreak havoc? You all know the reason better than we do. You all pocketed the demon god's divine essence that descended from the heavens and distributed it to your own people to create gods. Otherwise, the demon god would have been trapped by the divine essence that descended from the heavens to locate him. His cultivation would have been fixed within the divine essence for the rest of his life, and he wouldn't have been able to beat the 6 of you until 2 of you died and 4 were seriously injured. Do you want me and the phoenix to drink the bitter wine that you brewed?" When Yu Qianzhou saw the 4 appear, he vaguely guessed their origins. Now that he heard Ancient God Coiling Dragon's words, He was even more shocked. He didn't expect the divine essence to have the miraculous effect of fixing one's cultivation. In other words, the reason the demon god could become the demon god that shook the universe today was thanks to their selfishness. Coiling dragon, you can't say that. The god of heaven, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, said coldly, "Back then, regardless of whether we were right or wrong, we all obeyed the orders of Tao. Did we ever disobey the decrees of Tao, when you two dragon and phoenix envoys passed down the decrees of Tao? And when we were in trouble, you two did nothing to save us. Isn't that a little unreasonable? It's not that you never disobeyed, but with the example of the war god and the wind god, you didn't dare to disobey." The coiling dragon great god casually threw out these words, which immediately caused the expressions of the four ancient gods to change greatly. These words were a little harsh. It was simply a blatant tearing of the veil. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little tense, the ancient phoenix god smiled and tried to diffuse the tension. "All right, what's there to argue about in the past? Ask yourselves honestly. If it weren't for Tao appearing at the last moment and setting up that bet, restraining the demon gods for so many years, I believe that all of you wouldn't have the opportunity to stand here and watch the show today." When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he looked around suspiciously. He secretly pondered over Phoenix's words. Wait here to watch the show? What kind of excitement was there to see? Humph! Thunder God snorted in dissatisfaction and snapped. Tao only knows how to play tricks all the time. We've never seen him show his true ability. He always gets someone else to do it for him. If he really has the ability, he should have subdued the demon god back then. Why did he have to make such an unnecessary bet? I don't think he's a match for the demon god. That's right, he's the one who made the bet. Where is he now? After playing tricks for so many years, it's time for him to come out and show us his true face. This time, it will be as you wish. The coiling dragon god replied indifferently, giving a definite answer. The scene suddenly quietened down. The four ancient gods of light looked at each other with a faint anticipation in their eyes. It was as if they were asking each other if they could really see the true face of Tao this time. Bet? What bet? Yu Qianqiu was still thinking about the bet when he suddenly heard that Tao would appear. His eyes flickered, and he also became expectant. He wanted to see what kind of person this legendary Tao was. As the stars moved and everyone was speechless, the water god broke the silence. Her beautiful eyes kept looking at Yu Qianqiu. She found that Yu Qianqiu was also peeking at her from time to time, as if he was drooling over her beauty. But she knew that was not the case. She could not help but giggle. "Little brother, are you thinking about me? Why, do you want to devour me as well to strengthen your 5 elements grand technique? I advise you to give up on this idea, or else I will not be polite." It sounded like a scolding joke, but in fact, it was a warning. However, Yu Qianqiu did have the improper thought of devouring her, and he was really thinking of a way. Who knew that the sound of water would expose his crooked idea? He quickly waved his hand and said, No, it's just that Senior is so beautiful that I couldn't help but look a few more times." Beautiful? The water god was amused by him and giggled. She knew that she was beautiful, but because of her identity and status, no one had dared to praise her like this for many years. She spread her sleeves and looked at the ancient phoenix god with her bright eyes. She said coquettishly, "People say that Sister Phoenix is more beautiful than me. Why don't you peek at her?" That? Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed. He could not say that he had already peeked at the ancient phoenix god, right? It was not good to not answer a strong person's question, so he could only reply weakly, "To each their own." The coiling dragon god chuckled, but the ancient phoenix god rolled her eyes, as if saying, "When did I, a dignified ancient god, become a carrot?" Glib tongue. The water god scolded, but she laughed so hard that she was convulsing. After all, which woman did not like others to praise her beauty, and the goddess was no exception. The others, on the other hand, had a lot on their minds. Obviously, they were not in a good mood. The ancient god looked at Yu Qianqiu and finally could not help but frown and ask, "Even if he has the supreme divine bow of A, isn't his cultivation a little too low? How can he be a match for the demon god? Star Pearl, 5 Elements Grand Technique, Heaven and Earth Splitting Arrow, Supreme Divine Bow. The ancient god of light also frowned and said, "But his cultivation is too low. He is not even qualified to fight with the demon god. Letting him complete that bet is simply child's play. Does Tao have any other tricks up his sleeve? I will fight with the demon god. I will complete the bet." Yu Qianqiu looked at the others and realized that they were all staring at him. He hurriedly waved his hand and explained, "Seniors, you have misunderstood. I am here to find someone. That bet is your business. It has nothing to do with me." "You found someone in the Yuchen Palace? What a joke." The god of thunder snorted, implying that he was treating them as idiots. Suddenly, a crack in space was torn open, and a majestic murderous intent filled the air. The few of them were all shocked and looked back at the same time. A tall black figure walked out of the crack step by step, attracting everyone's attention. The ancient god of light and the other 3 instantly became nervous, and the smile on the water god's face turned serious. The newcomer was shrouded in demonic aura, and his long, messy hair fluttered in the wind. There was a long and thin, diamond-shaped blood mark between his eyebrows, and under his thick brows, his cold and emotionless eyes shone with a cold brilliance like diamonds. His cheeks were deep and sharp, and under his steel-like nose bridge, his tightly shut lips were angular, full and mean, and as red as rubies. The crack in space disappeared behind him, and his arms were wrapped tightly around the black waistcoat that covered his body. He quietly floated in the air, staring coldly at the people below, making them shudder. He was extremely arrogant. The black was the demon, and the red was his heart, but he was as lonely as snow. The demon god. These 2 words almost jumped out of Yu Qianqiu's throat. Yu Qianqiu's pupils shrank. Although he had never seen the demon god's true body before, he had seen the demon god's clone that was attached to Demon King 3 nights. It was indeed wearing a black waistcoat. Coupled with the reactions of everyone present, it would be strange if he could not guess who the newcomer was. Intimidating everyone present, only Great God Coiling Dragon and Great God Phoenix could reveal a trace of pity when they exchanged glances. The others did not even gasp loudly. "Knight, you've come." Great God Coiling Dragon laughed. "I've waited for so many years to fulfill this bet. How could I not come?" The demon god's voice was like a cold wind blowing out from a crack in an ancient iceberg. The demonic aura around his body was almost tangible. His gaze then landed on the 4 ancient gods, and he said indifferently, "If I lose today, you can kill me as you please. If I win, I will take back everything you owe me with interest. No one will be able to save you." The expressions of the 4 ancient gods froze, but none of them dared to retort. Yu Qianqiu thought to himself, "Holy crap, are we going to have a decisive battle today? Is it a 1-on-1 or 6 against 1? It would be best if we all go up together and torture the demon god to death." Even in his dreams, he had never thought about this matter. Instead, he was just watching the show. Ancient God Phoenix shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Knight, as long as you agree to obey Tao's decree, it's not too late for you to give up now." The demon god interrupted her on the spot. "There's no need. I never meant obey or surrender. Otherwise, I wouldn't be the demon god knight of today." Then, his gaze pressed toward Yu Qianqiu like a sharp blade. "You've got guts to go against me. You don't even know that you've been used by others. But ignorance isn't a reason for me to let you go. It's time to settle the score between us. If I want to kill you, even the star bead can't save you." Yu Qianqiu was filled with hatred. Unfortunately, he was not as strong as the demon god, so he couldn't speak up. He looked at the people around him and cursed. "Bullsh *T ancient gods. You've been bullied to this extent, but you don't even dare to fart." The demon god's cold eyes swept across the starry sky again. He shouted in a cadence, "Tao, I've come to fulfill our bet. When are you going to show up?" Great God Coiling Dragon and Great God Phoenix looked at each other and answered in unison. "Tao has already entrusted us to supervise the execution of the bet." "Oh, The demon god suddenly turned around and stared coldly at Yu Qianqiu. In other words, we can start now? But don't you think that by letting him fight with me, Dao has already admitted defeat? Me and you. Yu Qianqiu pointed at himself with a stunned expression. Looking at the reactions of the people around him, the ancient god of light and the other three couldn't help but sigh slightly. They looked at him with pity in their eyes, undoubtedly telling him that what the demon god said was true. Chapter 1242. What kind of joke is this? How can you be like this? Yu Qianqiu couldn't hold it in any longer. This was a matter of life and death, so there was no need to endure it any longer. Who cared if they were ancient gods or old gods? He pointed at their noses and stomped his feet, cursing. What does the grudge between you and him have to do with me? They came knocking on our door, and you guys didn't go up to fight them. You want me to die? I won't do it. He suddenly raised a hand at the demon god and shouted with righteous indignation, Demon god, this has nothing to do with me, and I won't agree to it. Settle the grudge between you and them with them. If they insist on pushing me out as a scapegoat, then I admit defeat. I admit defeat right now. He pointed at the ancient god of light and the others. I've already admitted defeat, so you don't have to fight with me. You can kill them to your heart's content. I have no objections. The moment he said this, the coiling dragon and phoenix gods were stunned. This was the first time they had seen someone admit defeat in such a righteous manner. The expressions of the ancient god of light and the others darkened, and they all stared at him with malicious intent. If not for the fact that this person wanted to carry out the bet of Dao, they would have instantly turned him into dust. If Yu Qianqiu was asked if he was afraid of them, he would definitely be afraid. But then again, there were conditions for Yu Qianqiu to be afraid. If he showed that he was afraid of them, then it would be fine as long as they didn't take him seriously. He had no strength, so he admitted defeat. But you want to push me out to die? In a situation where I'm going to die either way, can't I die with a bit of backbone? Since that's the case, why should I be afraid? However, these words surprised the demon god slightly. He floated in the air and stared at Yu Qianqiu. He was not stingy with his praise. Good lad. This is how a man should be. Those who respect me live, and those who insult me die. If a real man doesn't kill and people don't know my infamy, then wouldn't everyone be able to bully me? It's not unjust for San Yi and the others to die at your hands. It's a pity that you didn't enter my demon sect. Just because you dared to point at them and curse, I'll give you a quick death later. The grudge between us will be resolved. The ancient god of light and the others grimaced, but they didn't dare to say anything. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth and looked at the god fiend. He didn't know whether to cry or laugh. When he heard the first part of the sentence, he thought that the god fiend would let him off because of his character. But it turned out that the god fiend still wanted to kill him. The god fiend was 2F** king clear about gratitude and grudges. He bit the bullet and cupped his hands. Senior god fiend, you flatter me. His expression and actions seemed to show that he did not care about life and death, but he was secretly on guard. He was prepared to immediately retreat if something went wrong and bring the people from Utopia to the barrier of the heavens to avoid this calamity. As for the dangers in the barrier of the heavens, he would think about it when the time came. If it was not for the fact that he was worried about Wu Lishua's safety, he would have long since fled. To him, if he knew that he had no chance of winning, he would be a fool to continue fighting. The demonic god no longer looked at him. He stared at the other two and said, Phoenix? Coiling dragon? Can we start now? The demonic energy around him began to surge. The Phoenix god and coiling dragon god looked at each other. The latter smiled and said, It's not time yet. We'll have to wait a little longer. The god fiend narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly. The day to fulfill the bet is today. How long do you want to drag it out? Could it be that Dao wants to go back on his word? Of course not. Coiling Dragon shook his head and smiled. Wait a moment. The person who will fight you should be arriving soon. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. Their expressions varied. Some were stunned, some were puzzled. Yu Qianqiu was pleasantly surprised. It's not him? The god fiend stretched out a hand from his waistcoat and pointed directly at Yu Qianqiu. The phoenix god nodded and smiled. How can he be a match for the number one expert in the immortal realm with his mere cultivation? Of course not him. The four ancient gods of light immediately stared at Yu Qianqiu, their killing intent not concealed at all. Yu Qianqiu looked at them weakly and cursed inwardly. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have offended these four. It seemed that having a backbone wasn't always a good thing. Sure enough, the ancient god of light said expressionlessly, "Since he's not the one who fulfilled the bet with Tao, why is he standing here?" His words and actions made it seem like he was about to attack. "You can try and touch him. It's not your turn to kill him." The four ancient gods of light didn't dare to act rashly at the demon god's nonchalant words. They looked at the god fiend with eyes full of hatred. The god fiend, on the other hand, had a look of disdain on his face. With a slight shake of his arm, a large mass of demonic energy gushed out from his waistcoat. A bloody man that was neither human nor ghost wailed incessantly in the tumbling demonic energy. Countless demons tore off pieces of his flesh, and when a piece was torn off, another piece would grow out. The cycle repeated endlessly. He was in a state where he could neither live nor die. His miserable cries were intolerable to the ears, and his appearance sent chills down everyone's spine. Almost everyone present looked at the ancient god of light. Everyone knew that the person who was suffering under the godfiend's feet was the ancient god of light's descendant, Qin Yang. This was equivalent to slapping the ancient god of light in the face. "Your name is Yu Qianqiu, right?" The god fiend suddenly asked Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu nodded blankly. He didn't know why the god fiend wanted to kill him and save him. The god fiend looked at him indifferently and said, "Yu Qianqiu, beneath my feet is the descendant of the ancient god of light. For countless years, he has been wailing under my feet day and night. He is worse than a pig or a dog. His ancestor is an ancient god, but he doesn't dare to come and save him. He doesn't even have the courage to fight me, but he dares to kill you because he's unhappy. I make him unhappy day and night, but he doesn't even dare to fart. Why is that?" Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly and said, "Naturally, it's because I can't beat him." "That's right." The god fiend snorted coldly and said, "Before you die, I'll let you understand this principle so that you can turn over a new leaf in your next life. Look at the faces of these ancient gods now. They bully the kind and fear the evil, bully the weak and fear the strong. You treat them like gods, but they still think they are something. If you treat them like dogs, they are actually dogs or even worse than dogs. After you die, I'll slaughter all of them and give you a chance to step on them like dogs in your next life." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. There was no need to thank him. The ancient god of light clenched his fists tightly in his sleeves. His heart was bleeding, but he didn't dare to lose his temper. The faces of the other three also darkened. Who could stand being called worse than dogs in front of their faces, let alone these supreme ancient gods? However, they didn't dare to act rashly. This guy in front of them was too powerful. If they dared to express any objection to his words, he would immediately beat them into a dead dog. They could only endure it. Although the coiling dragon god and the phoenix god were also among those who were scolded, the two of them seemed somewhat indifferent. However, the god fiend was silently observing their movements from the corner of his eyes. This god fiend was indeed arrogant. As soon as he appeared, the others didn't even have the right to speak. As expected of the number one expert in the divine realm, this was the evaluation that Yu Qianqiu came up with after observing. Coiling dragon, phoenix, if I'm not wrong, the star bead, 5 elements great technique, heaven and earth splitting arrow, and supreme divine bow are all gathered on him. It's just a smokescreen to confuse me and divert my attention, the god fiend said as he stared at the two of them. The eyes of the ancient god of light and the other three also lit up as they looked at the two of them, but the two of them smiled and didn't answer. "All right, I'll wait." The god fiend didn't mind. His deep gaze turned to the endless starry sky, and he slowly said with some emotion, I haven't found an opponent for so many years, and no one understands my loneliness. I'm actually looking forward to seeing the person who can fight to the death with me. Tao, the person you found must not disappoint me. In the mausoleum of the gods' mausoleum, under the bright moonlight, the dark red tomb was still floating in the air, waiting quietly. Opposite it, in the boundary of heaven, the 9 by Changchun standing in the void moved. In silence, the 9 people quietly merged as one, and the green-robed by Changchun slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were clear, and like lightning, they shot toward the dark red tomb floating in the mausoleum of the gods' mausoleum. He took a light step, and it was as if he had crossed an eternity in an instant. The space seemed to condense into a threshold, and he stepped out of the boundary of heaven. The green-robed by Changchun stopped in the void, and the eyes on his thin face flickered. Looking at the inscription on the tombstone of the wind god, he frowned slightly and said, You're the wind god? You've resurrected? He was also a little surprised. He didn't expect the legend of resurrection in the mausoleum of the gods' mausoleum to be true. The powerful consciousness of the wind god's mausoleum surged out and scanned Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun didn't stop it and let it examine him. Then a voice came from inside. Your cultivation is at the late stage of the ancient god realm, and you haven't reached the realm of the great perfection. Did you kill my messenger of heaven and earth? Yes, I did. Bai Changchun's consciousness also scanned the inside of the mausoleum and said calmly, You're not my opponent. What he meant was that he was the one who killed the wind god. But don't think about taking revenge because you're not his opponent. Knowing that the other party was the wind god, he could still say such words calmly. It was obvious that he was very confident. The grave mound guarded by the blood jade red crystal fell silent, as if it was weighing something. After a long time it sighed slowly. I've resurrected, and my cultivation is no longer at my peak. But victory or defeat doesn't depend entirely on the difference in cultivation. But you can freely enter and exit the boundary of heavens. I admit that I'm not as good as you. I feel that you're like an old friend of mine. My body is trapped in this tomb, and I can't go out. Otherwise, my soul will scatter. Do you dare to come in and have a talk? Bai Changchun looked at the tomb again and felt a little strange. Although the wind god's cultivation was only at the middle stage of the ancient god realm, this tomb couldn't even stop a minor god realm expert, so how could it trap an ancient god realm expert? He paused and said, It seems that you can't come in contact with the outside world. How can I go in? The huge grave mound crashed to the ground, and the wind god's voice came from inside. Come in from underground. Bai Changchun didn't hesitate. His figure flashed, and he forced open the soil, made a turn underground, and directly drilled into the tomb. Chapter 1243. On the stone bed of blood jade and red crystal, the wind god stood there quietly, staring at Bai Changchun, who drilled in from the ground, speechless. Thousands of strands of red light seeped down from the blood jade and red crystal on the dome and quietly poured into the wind god's body. The scene was very strange. Bai Changchun's brows furrowed in confusion. After a long silence, he slowly said, You just said that I'm like an old friend of yours. I also feel like I've seen you somewhere before, but I can't remember where we've met. From the moment he came in, the wind god's face was moved, and then relieved. He smiled bitterly and said, It's normal that you can't remember. 2 people who refused to submit to fate. To be exact, we met in our previous life. You and I both died once. I was resurrected, but you were reincarnated. Previous life? Bai Changchun's green robe swayed without wind. He also seemed to be moved. His eyes flickered. What do you mean? I can't believe that after reincarnation, your appearance and voice are still exactly the same as in your previous life. Nothing has changed. The wind god looked at him without moving. It was unknown whether he was pitying Bai Changchun or mocking himself. He sighed slightly. I am the wings of the wind god. Although my end is miserable, at least I know who I am. But you even forgot who you are. War God Rue, my friend. When will you awaken? When will you and I get back the glory that once belonged to us? Even if Bai Changchun was calm, he couldn't help but tremble when he heard the other party's words. He whispered, "What did you say? You don't believe me?" The wind god smiled bitterly. "I had some doubts before, but now that you are standing in front of me, I can be sure without hesitation. You are the war god Rue whose strength is second only to Yi among the gods. Of course, if it did not have the help of the supreme divine Bao, and the realm of 10 suns in one fury was world-shattering, he might not have been able to stop you, the first person since the creation of the world. After all, no one should underestimate the sharpness of being able to become a god in battle. Even if he had the supreme divine Bao and the heaven and earth splitting arrow of Tao, he still had to perish together with you to be able to restrain you. This was already a problem. As for how the future generations will evaluate it, the winner is the king, and the loser is the thief. You lost, you lost. A dead person can't fight for anything. The treacherous red light in the tomb wriggled and fell into a brief silence. Bai Changchun was silently digesting the other party's words. As for whether he believed it or not, it was meaningless to him now. "I want to know what happened back then," Bai Changchun asked calmly. "No problem." The wind god smiled, and his eyes became misty. His thoughts returned to those passionate days, and he told the story of the past until he was resurrected after his fall. As one of the people involved, his narration was the truth that he saw with his own eyes, unlike the legends that others said, which would be biased. After listening, Bai Changchun did not speak for a long time. He could not imagine that he was the reincarnation of the war god Rue who battled against the heavens and earth. Even he himself was a little fascinated. He closed his eyes slightly and said slowly, 10 suns in one fury, but I only have 9 avatars now, not even reaching the realm of full circle. The wind god looked at him for a while and said slowly, "Of course, with your character as the war god Rue, you won't surrender to the despotic power of Tao even if you die. I think you didn't surrender to Tao and were reborn after the soul and spirit became one. Instead, you relied on your strong will to be reborn with the life soul that only existed in this space. Sigh. How could a mere remnant soul cultivate to the realm of full circle? It's already not easy for you to reach the cultivation of the late ancient god. If it were someone else, I'm afraid they wouldn't even have the possibility of being reborn. At least, I don't have the confidence to do it. Otherwise, I would have been reborn a long time ago. How could I end up like this in this tomb? Where is the divine realm?" Bai Changchun suddenly asked in a low voice. The wind god was stunned and said anxiously, "What do you want to do? Haven't you given up? Even you couldn't beat them in the past, let alone with your current cultivation." Bai Changchun snorted slightly and said indifferently, "Whether what you said is true or false, it doesn't matter who I was in my previous life. Today I am me. I practice my Tao and practice my great Tao. Why should I be shackled to my previous life? I just want to meet the current number 1 expert in the divine realm, the demon god. You." The wind god paused and finally said with a bitter smile, "You don't care about your previous life, but the imprint of the war god in your soul can't be erased, making your nature exactly the same as the war god. Forget it. I know I can't persuade you, although I also died not long after you died, so I don't know about them opening up the divine realm. I asked the people in the mausoleum of the god of sin after I was resurrected. I have some understanding of the coordinates of the divine realm in this vast universe." After he told Bai Changchun the location of the divine realm, he sighed and said, "I'll wait for you here. If you're still alive, why don't you come back to see me and let me know that you're still alive?" Bai Changchun looked at him deeply and didn't say anything else. He resolutely left the way he came. After exiting the tomb, he hurriedly went to look for some of the tomb keepers nearby. No one dared to refuse his questions. After confirming the location of the god realm, he stared at the vast starry sky for a long time. Then, he directly cut open a crack in the void, and the green-robed figure floated away without looking back in the Yuchen Palace. Yu Qianqiu maintained 120% vigilance and secretly paid attention to the others. Although he also wanted to see who the person who fulfilled the bet with the demon god was, he still felt that his life was more important. If he found something wrong, the first thing he would do was to escape. As for whether he could escape or not, he would only know after he escaped. Everyone stood still like mountains. The god fiend, who was wearing a black waistcoat, floated in the air with his eyes closed. Only Yu Qianqiu was looking around. The moment Bai Changchun stepped into the divine realm, Great God Coiling Dragon and Great God Phoenix, who stood side by side in the Yuchen Palace, looked back and shook their heads slightly. Great God Coiling Dragon sighed and said, "In the end, he still came." The demon god suddenly opened his eyes, which emitted a strong fighting spirit. The others also quickly looked at the two of them with inquiring eyes. An old friend is going to meet everyone. Great God Coiling Dragon glanced at the ancient god of light and the others with a bitter smile. He then turned back to Great God Phoenix and said with a bitter smile, "If I don't guide him, I'm afraid he won't be able to find this place in a short time. This is your territory, and you're the master. I won't act on your behalf." An indescribable bitterness surged on Great God Phoenix's face. After looking at everyone, he casually drew a crack in the void with his hand. Bai Changchun, who was dressed in a green robe, was looking around at the divine realm that he had just arrived in. Suddenly, a crack in the void appeared above his head. His eyes were like lightning, and he suddenly looked up, only to hear a woman's ethereal voice coming from the crack in the void. "Long time no see. You're finally here. Please." Bai Changchun's eyes were bright and spirited. Now, he naturally knew how high the cultivation of someone who could tear open the void was. He himself had just obtained such a divine ability, which meant that the cultivation of this woman who was invited should be higher than his. However, he did not have the slightest scruple. Instead, his eyes shone brightly. As long as it was someone with a higher cultivation than him, he would be interested. High up in the sky, a green-robed figure took a step and disappeared into the crack in the void. When he passed through the void and stepped into the Yuchen Palace, even though the ancient god of light and the others were experienced and knowledgeable, when they saw his appearance, they were all dumbfounded. Their mouths opened so wide that one could stuff an egg inside. The demon god narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked at him. Great God Coiling Dragon and Ancient God Phoenix looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Yu Qianqiu looked as if he had seen something unbelievable. His mouth opened even more exaggeratedly, so wide that one could stuff a fist inside. He swallowed with difficulty and thought that he had seen wrong. He rubbed his eyes hard and only dared to exclaim, "Master, why are you here?" When Bai Changchun saw Yu Qianqiu, he was also stunned for a while. He also could not understand why Yu Qianqiu had come here before him. This disciple of his seemed to be omnipotent. Back then, he could enter the 9 netherworld cave that he could not enter. He could enter the sealed East Holy Land. Not to mention the immortal, nether, and devil realms, he could also enter the boundary of the heavens. Now, he could even come here before him in this place that he could not find. Bai Changchun was really speechless. Even he could not understand it. This disciple of his was too good at messing around. It seemed that no matter where he went, he could see him running out and poking his nose in. He was not very capable, but it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the best in the world when it came to messing around. If I remember correctly, wherever this kid goes, there will be trouble. He is simply a natural jinx. Bai Changchun could not help but think this in his heart. He had no choice but to accept it. "Rue, it's you. Rue, you're still alive. War god Rue." After coming to their senses, the ancient god of light and the others exclaimed. Their faces were full of surprise and joy. Back then, the person who had the ability to lead them against the Tao was this person in front of them. That world-shaking ability was still unforgettable to them. In the midst of their shock, they suddenly exclaimed at the same time. Following Bai Changchun's gaze, they all looked at Yu Qianqiu. Only then did they remember what this kid had just shouted. The ancient god of light pointed at Yu Qianqiu and asked Bai Changchun, "Rue, Are you his master? Yu Qianqiu's spirit was lifted. He felt as if he had found a backer. He ran over and bowed. Master, why are you here? Halfway through his words, he also reacted. Looking at the ancient god of light and the others, he felt like digging his index finger into his mouth. He said in surprise, "They called you war god Rui?" Bai Changchun frowned slightly. Looking at him, who wanted to bite his finger, he said in a deep voice, "Why are you here again?" He also wanted to figure out what was going on with this kid. That. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the phoenix god and said bashfully, "Master, you know that Wu Lixue. She is now in the hands of the phoenix god. This disciple has come to beg the phoenix god to release her." Chapter 1244. Wu Lixue, Phoenix God. These two names flashed through Bai Changchun's mind. He knew that the former was one of the women of this unruly disciple, and the latter was a legendary figure whom he had heard of for a long time. Bai Changchun's eyes slowly swept over everyone present, and finally fixed on the Phoenix God. It wasn't because of her graceful beauty, but because the voice that led him here was this woman's voice, so it must be the Phoenix God. Dressed in a green robe, Bai Changchun stared at the Phoenix God and shouted, "Let her go!" To be honest, he was not interested in the fact that Yu Qianqiu was dragging a bunch of women behind him. After all, Furong was the one he recognized, and Yu Qianqiu was entangled with so many women, so he was a little unhappy. Of course, he didn't have the leisure to meddle with Yu Qianqiu's affairs, but today was different. The disciple had laid out the matter in front of the master, and Wu Lixue was a descendant of the four great families. As the master, how could he not stand up for her? There was no need to distinguish who was right and who was wrong. Since I'm here, no matter how powerful the Phoenix God is, just one word. Let her go. These two words were light and breezy, but to everyone, they were secretly shocked. The hidden meaning of the words was very clear. It was clearly a threat to the Phoenix God, or else he would have to bear the consequences. The ancient god of light and the other three couldn't hide the excitement in their eyes. War God Elite was indeed War God Elite, even in the face of the dragon and phoenix emissaries of Tao. His words and actions were still so sharp and clean. War God Elite was back, and he was as elegant as ever. The demon god's eyes twinkled as he looked at him. Of course, he had heard of the legend of War God Elite. He was the most famous guy in ancient times, who forced Tao to change the situation of the world, even though he fell in the end. Listening to his words and observing his actions, he really lived up to his reputation. He was worthy of a fight. The fighting spirit in the demon god's eyes became more and more intense. The Phoenix God and the coiling dragon god looked at each other and smiled bitterly, as if saying that this guy was still the same and hadn't changed at all. The Phoenix God was slightly embarrassed as he said, "Rui, it's not what you think. I didn't capture that girl. That girl has a great destiny with my Phoenix clan, so I won't harm her. Let him go." Bai Changchun said again expressionlessly. He didn't even repeat his words. It was still the same word. Although his tone wasn't as harsh as before, the atmosphere instantly tensed up. Those who had come into contact with Elite War God knew that in this guy's hands, there was no third time. If the great Phoenix God didn't let them go, the following situation would definitely be one of them dying. If the Phoenix God and War God Rui fought, the coiling dragon god would definitely not sit by and watch the Phoenix God suffer. Seeing that the situation had deviated from the direction of development, and that an unexpected battle was likely to occur, everyone's eyes turned to the Phoenix God. If she couldn't take this lying down, then there would be a good show to watch. The ancient god of light and the other three felt a vague sense of relief. The Phoenix and coiling dragon had relied on their reputation as the Dragon Phoenix envoys to suppress them in every aspect for many years. Now that the fierce characters had returned, let's see what you can do. Yu Qianqiu was secretly nervous, afraid that Bai Changchun would suffer a loss. The Phoenix god's beautiful face was a little embarrassed. After so many years, even the demon god had never embarrassed her like this. Seeing her full chest rise and fall slightly, the coiling dragon god frowned and shook his head at her, hinting that she shouldn't gamble on a moment of anger. The phoenix god immediately came to her senses. The matter was very obvious. Not to mention whether it would affect the bet between Dao and the demon god. She couldn't bear the consequences if things got out of hand. Since Dao had appointed war god Rui to fulfill the bet with the demon god, it meant that war god Rui had the strength to fight against the demon god. Even if she and Coiling Dragon joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for the demon god, so naturally, they wouldn't be a match for war god Rui. Not to mention that war god Rui's power was still fresh in her memory. A bitter smile immediately appeared on her face, and she said, "Rui, that girl was originally going to become a god, and it will only be good for her. But if you insist on doing this, I have nothing to say. But I'll say the ugly words first. Everything depends on that girl's willingness. If that girl is willing to stay with me, you don't force her. If she's not willing, I won't force her either. What do you think?" These words were tantamount to admitting defeat. Yu Qianqiu was immediately delighted, and looked at Bai Changchun with eyes full of admiration. This old guy had been awesome from the human world to the immortal and netherworld, and was still as awesome as ever in the god realm. In front of so many top experts, he still dared to make a naked threat. It was hard to accept. Without waiting for Bai Changchun to reply, he rushed to answer. He also didn't want to cause any trouble for Bai Changchun. "Of course, I never do anything to force Shuer. Everything depends on her true will." He seemed to be reminding the other party not to play tricks in the dark. The phoenix god couldn't help but roll her eyes at him, and pouted coquettishly, "You brat!" If it wasn't for Bai Changchun, she probably wouldn't be pouting coquettishly, but courting death. She raised her hand and waved, and a ball of profound light appeared in front of her. She reached into it, and the trembling Wu Lixue was pulled out by her. "Shuer!" Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but cry out in joy, and directly ran over. Wu Lixue's eyes turned, and she happily called out, "Yu Qianqiu." The two hugged each other in front of everyone, and the latter sobbed, "I thought I would never see you again." "Hee, how is that possible? No one bullied you, right?" Yu Qianqiu held her shoulders and looked up and down, and found that the places that should be firm were firm, and the places that should be protruding were protruding. She didn't lose any flesh, and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He pulled her hand, turned around, and walked away. "Come with me." And Wu Lixue's tears turned into a smile, and she hugged his arm tightly, unwilling to let go. The two of them simply didn't care about anyone else. The phoenix god was so angry that his teeth itched. This brat actually forgot what he had said just now, and really thought that this was a place where he could come and go as he pleased. He immediately shouted, "Stop!" But when he saw Bai Changchun's green robe fluttering, and that piercing gaze that suddenly became fierce, he immediately lost his temper, and changed his tone, and said with a bitter smile, "Wu Lixue, do you still remember what I told you before? You have the opportunity to become a god, and after you become a god, you might have a chance to be with this brat again. If you leave now, it's equivalent to giving up the chance to become the phoenix goddess. You have to think clearly. That was then, and this was now. He had already come out, so how could he give up?" Not caring whether Wu Lixue agreed or not, Yu Qianqiu patted his chest, and directly made the decision for Wu Lixue. He patted the back of Wu Lixue's hand comfortingly, and pointed to Bai Changchun, saying, "Shuer, don't be afraid. Master has come to make the decision for us. That bullshit god title, we don't care." What a joke. He had already heard that after becoming a god, one's cultivation future would be limited by the godhead, and they could only circle in the godhead's frame for the rest of their lives. How could he let his own woman suffer this hidden loss? Moreover, the reason why he took a fancy to Wu Lixue was because he knew that this girl was destined to sleep in the same bed with him, share the same quilt, and be a good woman who followed her husband. She knew that her man would not harm her, and would definitely listen to him. Sure enough, Wu Lixue did not let him down. She once again hugged his arm tightly, and nodded hard, but also did not dare to look at the phoenix god again. The phoenix god bit his lip and resolutely said, "Since you are not willing to follow me, then I naturally can't give you my phoenix cloud robe. With a wave of her sleeve, a cluster of nebulae of light shot out from Wu Lishua's body and fell into her palm and disappeared. The phoenix god's complexion didn't look too good when the person he liked was snatched away, but he did not say anything. No matter how good the treasured robe was, Yu Qianqiu did not care. If it was gone, then it was gone. He cheerfully led Wu Lixue to Bai Changchun's side and said, "This is Master. Quickly greet Master." Wu Lixue had naturally heard of Yu Qianqiu, this powerful master who ran amok without any scruples. Although she had not seen him with her own eyes, she had seen a portrait of him in the family. She immediately let go of Yu Qianqiu's hand and respectfully knelt down to salute and said, "Wu Lixue pays respect to the ancestor." And Bai Changchun slightly nodded in response. Yu Qianqiu smiled and helped Wu Lixue up. He felt that it was really good to have a big backer. He pulled Wu Lishua's hand and said to Bai Changchun, "Master, Schwerer has been found. Let's go back." As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. The bet between Tao and Demon God was still waiting for War God Rui to honor it. How could he leave now? If he left, what about the bet? Did this brat not hear what they said before? What they didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu was using this opportunity to play down this matter. He didn't think that Bai Changchun was really a match for Demon God, and there was no need for him to become someone else's tool. "Since you are here, let's settle this matter." Demon God's voice sounded in the air, and the figure in the waistcoat was already standing in front of Bai Changchun. Their eyes met, and sparks instantly flew. Both sides' fighting spirit directly soared. Yu Qianqiu secretly cursed. After beating around the bush, things still couldn't be avoided. He knew Bai Changchun's temperament. How could he leave without fighting to his heart's content when he met such an expert? He was afraid that Bai Changchun would be at a disadvantage if he didn't know the situation. So he quickly reminded, "Master, he is Demon God." Sure enough, as soon as he heard that the other party was Demon God, even if the sky collapsed, he wouldn't leave. Bai Changchun's eyes brightened, and he said in a sonorous voice, "You are Demon God Yi? War God Rui? I have long heard of your great name. Unfortunately, my Lord of Life is already dead, and I have always been regretful. I didn't expect that you are still alive. This is really great." Demon God's eternally cold face actually showed a trace of an excited smile. His messy hair danced in the air, and his green robe fluttered in the wind. "I have never seen War God Rui before. I am me. This old man is Bai Changchun." Bai Changchun didn't want to be associated with War God Rui, and he also didn't want to follow the crowd without proof. Even if he really was War God in his previous life, he didn't think that the glory of the past had anything to do with him in this life. Chapter 1245. You're not War God Elite? The Demon God was slightly surprised, but he immediately tossed the thought aside. His ruby-red lips cracked into a smile. "It doesn't matter if you're War God Elite or Bai Changchun, as long as you're the one who's here to honor my bet with Tao." "Bet?" Bai Changchun's gaze swept over the crowd, landing on Yu Qianqiu with a questioning look. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "I don't know what the bet is." The Demon God looked coldly at the coiling dragon and phoenix gods and said in a thunderous voice, "Coiling dragon? Phoenix? What do you mean? He's not the one who's going to honor my bet. Where's Tao? Tell him to come see me." A murderous aura instantly filled the entire Yuchen palace, causing it to tremble. The Demon God's anger was no small matter. The jade floor started to crack from under his feet and spread in all directions. Wu Lixue couldn't bear such a huge pressure at all. Yu Qianqiu used all his cultivation to protect her and escape. Before the two ancient gods could reply, Bai Changchun said in a majestic voice, "I don't care what kind of bet you have. I heard that you're the #1 expert in the God realm, so I'm here to find you. You'll have to get past me first before talking about your bet. You can't avoid me." The four ancient gods showed respect in their eyes. After so many years, they finally saw someone who dared to bully the Demon God. Arrogant. The demon god's eyes instantly turned blood red. He stared at Bai Changchun with a soul-stirring gaze and said disdainfully, "You dare to challenge me when you haven't even reached the great perfection realm? The ignorant are fearless." "Ye." Ancient god Coiling Dragon said indifferently. "The person Tao has appointed is him." Ancient god Phoenix also nodded. "I can prove it." Yu Qianqiu panicked and shouted, "Master, don't be used by others. Let them do whatever they want. Let's ignore them and watch them fight each other." With that, Ancient God Coiling Dragon and Ancient God Phoenix immediately looked over. They realized that this kid had come to mess things up. The Ancient God of Light and the other three also looked over. They had finally found someone who had a chance of defeating the demon god, and they were really afraid that this fellow would ruin their plans. If not for Bai Zhangxuan, they would have trampled him to death with one foot. The demon god calmed down after hearing the coiled dragon and Phoenix's confirmation. After confirming that the person he was fighting was right in front of him, he turned around and opened his mouth, sucking in the churning demonic clouds nearby in a single gulp. Qingyang, who was neither human nor ghost, was also eaten in a single gulp. Ancient God Light clenched his fists in his sleeves again and looked at the demon with hatred. "Since you've come to find me, I'll grant your wish." The god fiend regained his ice-cold appearance and said indifferently, "Where do you want to fight?" "You can choose." Hidden in his words was the meaning that he didn't want to take advantage of others and become a laughingstock. It's the same no matter where you are. Bai Changchun also did not want to take advantage of him. He just wanted a fair fight. The god fiend snorted coldly and did not say anything else. He turned back to look at the vast starry sky and floated into the depths of the universe like a phantom. Bai Changchun's gaze followed, and his fighting spirit soared. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, was anxious. Not knowing what to do, he suddenly shouted, "Master! Senior Nongzhu and Ancestor Nanming have already been killed by the Fiend Celestial." He couldn't help much, so he could only encourage Bai Changchun in this way at the critical moment and encourage him to do his best. Bai Changchun looked at him deeply and didn't say anything. He turned into a shadow and shot into the vast universe. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already disappeared from everyone's sight. Wu Lixue now understood what was going on. It turned out that the old ancestor was going to fight the #1 expert in the immortal realm. She was very confident in the legendary old ancestor, but seeing how nervous Yu Qianqiu was, she was also very nervous. After all, the opponent was the #1 expert in the immortal realm, the demon god. She couldn't help but grab Yu Qianqiu's hand tightly and ask in a trembling voice, "Yu Qianqiu, will the old ancestor be okay?" "He'll be fine." Yu Qianqiu hugged her shoulder tightly and comforted her, but he couldn't comfort himself. It wasn't just the two of them. The others were also very concerned about the progress of the battle. Ancient God Light looked at the people beside him and said with a twinkle in his eyes, "Should we follow and watch the battle from a close distance?" Water God and the others nodded. They had the same idea. Although their divine eyes were like lightning and could see very far away, they couldn't see the battle from a close distance. Who knew that at this time, Coiling Dragon would suddenly open his palm at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was shocked and shouted, "Coiling Dragon, what are you doing?" Everyone was shocked. They didn't think that Coiling Dragon would actually attack Yu Qianqiu at this time. Without needing to say anything, Sky God, Water God, Thunder God, and Ancient God Light all teleported to the center to protect Yu Qianqiu. Sky God looked at Coiling Dragon with a gloomy face and said sternly, "Coiling Dragon, even if you want to kill him, you have to wait until after the battle. We can't let Rui be distracted now. Otherwise, the four of us won't let you off." What a joke. They had placed all their hopes on War God Rui and were anxious for Bai Changchun to kill Demon God to avenge them. How could they allow others to affect the battle between Bai Changchun and Demon God? What are you all thinking? Is there a need for me to attack a junior? Given Night and Rui's cultivation, they can cross millions of miles in an instant. It's too tiring to follow and watch. I just want to take something from him and let everyone watch. Ancient god Coiling Dragon shook his head with a faint smile. With a wave of his hand, an ancient mirror floated out from Yu Chencho's body. It was the dark bright hell light mirror. Ancient god Light and the others were stunned. In Yang mirror? Yu Chencho's face immediately darkened as he cursed inwardly. The treasure on his body ran away with a wave of his hand. What was there to play with? Ancient god Coiling Dragon looked at the hovering dark bright hell light mirror and smiled at ancient god Phoenix. This Yin Yang mirror can peer into Yin and Yang. There is no place in the universe that it can't see. However, it can't be controlled without meditation cultivation. I can't control it by myself, so I'm afraid I'll have to work with you to control it. Ancient Phoenix god glanced at Yu Chencho, whose face had darkened, and nodded with a smile. She extended a hand and grasped Ancient Coiling Dragons. The two of them quickly spun in a circle, like a man and a woman dancing gracefully. A dragon and phoenix shadow surged out from each of their bodies and fused together, shooting rapidly toward the obsidian nether light mirror floating in the air. After the dark bright hell light mirror absorbed the shadow, it suddenly expanded into an ancient mirror that covered the sky. It was incomparably huge and stood in the starry sky outside Yuchen Palace. Coiling Dragon and Phoenix each extended a left and right hand and pointed at the mirror. Ripples appeared on the smooth surface of the mirror and disappeared, revealing the scene in the starry sky. If not for the frame around the mirror, the scene in the mirror would have been mistaken for a part of the starry sky. The dragon and phoenix combined. The scene in the mirror immediately turned according to their thoughts. The river of stars flowed and instantly searched the vast sea of stars. In the blink of an eye, it locked onto the two people floating in the starry sky. Even the conversation between the two could be clearly heard from the mirror. This yin-yang mirror was extremely mystical. Everyone let go of their distracting thoughts and forgot about what had just happened. They focused their attention on the two people in the mirror and stared intently. The Milky Way was faintly discernible, the river of stars was brilliant, and the shadows of shooting stars could be seen. The demon god's body was imposing. His long hair fluttered in the wind. The black waistcoat wrapped around his body undulated like a dark cloud. His eyes were tightly shut. Bai Changchun was thin and hale. His green robes fluttered in the wind and his short beard fluttered in the wind. His eyes were also slightly shut. Their clothes and hair fluttered even though there was no wind. Their powerful fighting spirit was instantly raised to the peak. Even the people watching the battle in front of the mirror seemed to be able to feel the oppressive and terrifying aura. Under the flying hair, the demon god's closed eyes slowly opened on both sides of the vertical slender blood mark. His eyes burst out with a diamond light that seemed to be real. With a swoosh, it streaked across the void and directly stabbed at his opponent. Bai Changchun's eyes suddenly opened. They also emitted a sharp light that seemed to be real. He did not avoid his opponent's gaze and instantly collided with them. The demon god's imposing body did not move, but Bai Changchun's body swayed. He took a few steps back in the void. His expression was unprecedentedly solemn. He knew that he had met the most powerful opponent in his life. In just an instant, it was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. The people watching the battle in front of the yin-yang mirror changed their expressions. The coiling dragon god and the phoenix god also looked at each other with solemn expressions. The doubt in their eyes could not be concealed. Even the two of them began to doubt the choice of Tao. The difference in cultivation was too big. Or rather, the demon god was too powerful. Could the war god Rui be a match for the demon god? Motherf asterisk Ker. F asterisk CK your ancestors. Yu Chencho directly burst out with a mouth full of profanities. No one knew who he was cursing. If he still had hope for Bai Changchun's monstrous life before, then at this moment, all his hopes immediately collapsed. Just a clash of eyes had caused this. It was obvious that the gap between the two sides was too big. There was no way for them to continue fighting. Wu Lixue, on the other hand, widened her eyes at the scene in front of her. She did not even dare to breathe loudly. She could also see that the elder ancestor's strength was not as strong as the demon god. Her hands tightly grasped Yu Chencho's palm. Her heart was in her throat. You are no match for me. The demon god looked at Bai Changchun disdainfully and said proudly, Admit defeat, submit to me and let Dao lose face, and I will spare your life. It hasn't started yet. It's not certain who will win. Bai Changchun snorted coldly and disappeared into the void. Whoosh! A huge hand grabbed at the void. The demon god's hand reached out from the black waistcoat. It seemed to be grabbing at a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow. However, no one could clearly see how his hand reached out. Bai Changchun, whose expression changed greatly, immediately appeared in the starry sky. He realized that he was being held in place by a strong grip and could not move. Do you think there is still a need to continue fighting? The demon god's body was tall and imposing. He looked at the vast starry sky in front of him and said calmly. He did not even look at Bai Changchun, who was being held in place by his side. His expression was extremely calm and arrogant. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.